The gunshot shattered the morning silence before Lena could finish pouring coffee. Glass exploded across her kitchen as she threw herself over the twins, their screams piercing her heart. 5 years. 5 years of hiding, of building a quiet life in a town no one cared about. 5 years of believing she'd escaped Marco DeLuca's world. But the past doesn't forget, and neither does the most dangerous man she ever loved. The children huddled beneath her weren't just hers anymore. They were his, and Marco's enemies had finally found what he didn't know he had. Leverage worth killing for. Thank you for watching. Please hit that like button and comment with your city below. I want to see how far this story reaches across the world. Now, let's begin. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams, same as it had for the past 3 years. Lena Harper moved between tables with practiced efficiency, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days, her smile automatic and paper-thin. She'd learned to be invisible here in Millbrook, Kansas, a town so small it didn't even warrant a dot on most maps. That invisibility had kept her alive. "More coffee, hun?" she asked the truck driver at table 4, already tilting the pot before he could answer. Her hands were steady, her voice warm. Nothing about her suggested that 5 years ago she'd been someone else entirely. Someone who'd worn designer dresses and diamonds, who'd slept in silk sheets in a penthouse overlooking the city, who'd loved a man so dangerous that even his name made grown men flinch. The driver nodded, barely looking up from his phone. Lena filled his cup and moved on, her eyes automatically scanning the room the way they always did. Old habit, dangerous habit. The kind of habit that marked you as someone who'd lived in a world where awareness meant survival. The bell above the door chimed. Lena's heart didn't skip. It never did anymore. She'd trained herself out of that particular weakness, but she should have paid attention. The man who walked in wore an expensive suit that had no business in a place like this. Charcoal gray, tailored to perfection, with shoes that probably cost more than Lena made in 6 months. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples, and a face that could have been carved from granite. Lena's hands didn't shake as she grabbed a menu. They didn't. She wouldn't let them. "Sit anywhere you like," she called out, her voice steady. Normal. Just another customer in just another day. The man's eyes swept the diner with the cold efficiency of someone conducting surveillance. When his gaze landed on Lena, something flickered across his features. Recognition, perhaps, or calculation. He chose a booth near the window, settling in with the careful awareness of someone who always kept his back to the wall and his eyes on the exits. Lena approached with her order pad and her waitress smile. "What can I get you?" He looked up at her, and the world tilted. She knew those eyes, dark brown, almost black, with a hardness that came from seeing too much death. She'd seen them before, years ago, standing beside Marco at functions she'd tried to forget, meetings she'd pretended not to understand. "Coffee," the man said, his voice a low rumble. "Black." "Coming right up." Lena turned away before he could see the recognition in her own eyes, before he could notice the way her pulse had started hammering in her throat. She poured the coffee with hands that wanted to shake but didn't dare. When she brought it back to his table, he was looking at her again. Really looking. The kind of assessment that stripped away 5 years and a new life like they were nothing but tissue paper. "You look familiar," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I get that a lot." Lena set the cup down carefully. "People say I have one of those faces." "No." His hand moved to his inside pocket, and Lena's entire body went rigid. But he only pulled out his phone, his thumb moving across the screen with deliberate purpose. "I don't think that's it." Lena didn't run. Running would confirm what he was clearly beginning to suspect. Instead, she smiled that bland waitress smile and said, "Let me know if you need anything else." She walked away on legs that felt like water. In the kitchen, she leaned against the counter and forced herself to breathe. It was fine. She was being paranoid. Even if he did recognize her, even if he was one of Marco's men, what were the odds he'd actually... Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. A text from her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who watched the twins after school. "Strange car parked across from your house. Black sedan. Been there for an hour." The coffee pot slipped from Lena's fingers and shattered against the floor. "Jesus, Lena," her manager, Stan, barked from the grill. "You okay?" She wasn't. She would never be okay again. I'm sorry. I have to go. Lena was already yanking off her apron, her hands moving on autopilot. Family emergency. You can't just... But Lena was already gone, bursting through the back door into the alley where her ancient Honda sat rusting in the Kansas sun. Her hands shook as she jammed the key into the ignition, her mind racing faster than her heart. The twins. Ethan and Emma. 5 years old, with Marco's dark eyes and her blonde hair, living proof of a life she'd tried to erase. They'd be getting home from kindergarten soon, bouncing through Mrs. Chen's door with their backpacks and their laughter and their beautiful, dangerous ignorance of who their father really was, what he was, what his world would do to them if it ever found out they existed. Lena's car screamed out of the parking lot, gravel spitting under her tires. In a rearview mirror, she saw the man from the diner step out of the building, phone pressed to his ear, watching her leave. Her entire body went cold. She drove too fast through streets she knew by heart, past the post office and the shuttered movie theater and the elementary school where the twins learned their ABCs. Millbrook streamed past her windows like a dying dream, this little town that had been her sanctuary and her prison for 5 long years. The black sedan was exactly where Mrs. Chen had said it would be, parked across the street from her tiny rental house, dark windows reflecting the afternoon sun like dead eyes. Lena pulled into her driveway with her heart in her throat. The twins. She ran for Mrs. Chen's door, not caring about the car, not caring about being seen. The door swung open before she could knock, and Mrs. Chen stood there with her kind, weathered face creased with worry. Lena, what's wrong? You look... Where are they? Lena pushed past her into the small, cluttered living room. Where are my babies? In the backyard, playing. Mrs. Chen touched her arm gently. Lena, what's happening? That car... But Lena was already moving, through the kitchen and out the back door where Ethan and Emma were building a castle in the sandbox, their dark heads bent together in concentration. They looked up when they heard her, their faces lighting up with identical smiles that broke her heart every single day. Mommy! Emma scrambled up, sandbox dirt cascading from her dress. Look what we made! It's a fortress, Ethan added proudly, still crouched by his creation. With a moat and everything. Lena dropped to her knees and pulled them both into her arms, holding them so tight they squirmed in protest. They smelled like sunshine and graham crackers and innocence, and she wanted to freeze this moment forever, to keep them in this safe, small world where the worst thing that could happen was a scraped knee or a lost toy. Mom, you're squishing us, Emma giggled. Sorry, baby. Lena forced herself to let go, to smooth Emma's hair and brush dirt from Ethan's cheek. Listen, we need to go home now, okay? We're going to pack some bags and take a little trip. A trip? Ethan's eyes went wide. Where? Somewhere fun, Lena lied, her smile bright and brittle as glass. It's a surprise. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her expression troubled. Lena, if you're in some kind of trouble, we're fine, Lena said, taking each twin by the hand. Thank you for watching them. I'll explain later, I promise. She wouldn't. There would be no later, no explanation, no goodbye. By this time tomorrow, they'd be gone, swallowed up by another anonymous town in another forgettable state, starting over with new names and new stories and the same crushing fear that never, ever went away. The twins chattered as they crossed back to their own house, oblivious to the terror clawing at Lena's chest. She kept them close, her body between them and the street, between them and the black sedan that still sat there like a patient predator. Inside, she moved with controlled panic. Ethan, Emma, go to your room and grab your favorite toys. Just a few, okay? We're going on an adventure. What kind of adventure? Emma wanted to know. The best kind. Now scoot. They scattered, their footsteps thundering up the narrow stairs, and Lena went to the kitchen. Her emergency bag was hidden in the false bottom of the pantry. Cash, documents, prepaid phones. She'd kept it packed for 5 years, praying she'd never need it. Her hands were pulling out the bag when the knock came at the front door. Lena froze. 3 sharp raps, authoritative and final as a death sentence. Mommy, Ethan called from upstairs. Someone's at the door. Stay in your room. Lena's voice came out sharper than she intended. She took a breath, forced calm into her tone. Just keep packing, baby. Mommy will handle it. Another knock, harder this time, insistent. Lena moved to the window and looked out through the edge of the curtain. The man from the diner stood on her porch, his expensive suit incongruous against the peeling paint and sagging steps. He stood with the patience of someone who knew she was watching, who knew she had nowhere to run. Behind him, in the street, the black sedan's door opened. Two more men emerged, both wearing the kind of casual clothes that didn't quite hide the weapons underneath. They'd found her. After 5 years of running, of hiding, of building a life from nothing, Marco DeLuca's world had found her. Lena's hand went to her phone. Who could she call? The police? And tell them what? That her ex-boyfriend's criminal organization had tracked her down? That the father of her children, the father they'd never met, was a man so dangerous that even cops looked the other way when his name came up? No, there was no help coming. There never had been. Another knock, followed by a voice. Mrs. Harper? We just want to talk. They knew her name. They knew where she lived, which meant they knew about the twins. Lena's entire world contracted to a single, terrible point. Protect them. Nothing else mattered. Not her fear, not her past, not even her life. Just Emma and Ethan, upstairs packing stuffed animals, innocent and perfect and hers. She opened the door a crack, keeping her body in the gap. I think you have the wrong house. The man from the diner smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I don't think so, Ms. Volkov. Lena's blood turned to ice. Volkov. Her real name, the one she'd buried along with everything else from her old life. I don't know what you're talking about. Lena Volkov, formerly employed as an art curator at the Metropolitan Museum, formerly residing at the Castellan Towers penthouse, formerly in a relationship with Marco DeLuca. The man's voice was clinical, reciting facts like a coroner reading a report. You disappeared 5 years ago. Mr. DeLuca has been looking for you. I don't know any Marco DeLuca. Really? The man pulled out his phone, turned it to show her the screen. It was a photograph, 5 years old, of Lena in a red dress standing beside a man whose face could stop hearts. Marco, younger, but no less dangerous, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling at some charity gala she barely remembered. Because this looks a lot like you. Lena's throat closed. That was a long time ago. Mr. DeLuca would very much like to speak with you. He has questions. Tell Mr. DeLuca I have nothing to say to him. I don't think you understand. The man's voice dropped, taking on an edge that made Lena's skin crawl. This isn't a request. There's a car waiting. You can come willingly, or we can make this difficult. Mommy? Emma's voice drifted down from upstairs. Are we ready to go yet? The man's eyes shifted, looking past Lena into the house, and something changed in his expression. Calculation, recognition, horror, maybe, or triumph. Lena couldn't tell which. You have children, he said slowly. They're not your concern. How old? Lena's hand tightened on the doorframe. Leave, now. But the man was already doing math in his head, already counting backward from the date she'd disappeared, already realizing what it meant. His eyes widened fractionally. Mr. DeLuca doesn't know, does he? I said leave. Jesus Christ. The man took a step back, and for the first time, Lena saw something like fear cross his features. He doesn't know he has... Lena slammed the door in his face and threw the deadbolt. Her hands were shaking now, her whole body trembling with adrenaline and terror. Upstairs, the twins were calling for her, their voices bright with excitement about their imaginary adventure. She had maybe 5 minutes before the men outside decided to stop being polite. Lena ran for the stairs. Ethan, Emma, we're leaving right now. She burst into their room to find them surrounded by toys and clothes, their little faces scrunched in concentration as they tried to fit everything into their small backpacks. They looked up at her, startled by her tone. But Mommy, we're not done. That's okay, baby. We'll buy new things. Lena grabbed the bags, threw in a few more items at random. Come on, right now. Are you mad at us? Ethan's lower lip trembled. No, sweetheart, never. Mommy just needs you to be very brave right now, okay? Lena knelt down, looking into their faces, Marco's eyes, her nose, a blend of genetics that told a story she'd tried to rewrite. Can you do that for me? They nodded, sensing her fear even if they didn't understand it. Good. We're going to go out the back door very quietly, and we're going to get in the car. No talking, no questions. Just like a game, okay? Like hide and seek, Emma whispered. Exactly like that. Lena took their hands and moved toward the stairs, her mind racing. The back door led to the alley behind the house. If she could get to the car, if she could get them on the road before the men realized, the sound of breaking glass exploded from downstairs. Lena's blood froze. They weren't waiting anymore. She reversed direction, pulling the twins back into their room. Under the bed, now, both of you. Mommy, now. Heavy footsteps sounded on the stairs, multiple sets moving with military precision. Lena shoved the twins under the bed and turned to face the door, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She had no weapons, no plan, nothing but her body between her children and whatever was coming through that door. The door swung open. The man from the diner stood there, flanked by his associates, and the look on his face was grim. Ms. Volkov, we need to go. Now. I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice. He stepped into the room, and Lena saw the gun at his hip, the way his hand hovered near it. Mr. DeLuca's orders. Marco can go to hell. Maybe, but you're still coming with us. His eyes swept the room, landing on the small shapes visible under the bed. Both of you. Don't touch them. Lena's voice came out low and dangerous, a mother bear protecting her cubs. Don't you dare touch my children. Mr. DeLuca's children, the man corrected, and he's going to want to meet them. He gave up that right when you ran? The man's expression hardened. When you disappeared without a word, carrying his children and let him think you were dead? When you robbed him of 5 years with his own kids? The words hit like bullets, each one finding its mark. Because he was right, she had run. She had stolen that time, made that choice, and she'd lived with the guilt of it every single day. But she'd also stayed alive. And so had her babies. He would have gotten them killed, Lena said quietly. His world, his enemies, they would have made the twins targets. I was protecting them. You were protecting yourself. Maybe that was true too. Maybe she'd been just as scared of Marco's love as she'd been of his violence, terrified of the way he consumed everything he touched, turned it dark and dangerous in his. Footsteps sounded from downstairs. Different footsteps, heavier, slower, with an authority that made the men around Lena straighten unconsciously. The man from the diner's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and something changed in his face. He's here. Lena's world stopped. No, she breathed. But it was too late. She heard him on the stairs, heard that familiar tread that had once made her heart race for entirely different reasons, heard the door to her children's bedroom open wider, heard the sharp intake of breath as Marco DeLuca saw her for the first time in 5 years. He looked exactly the same and completely different. Still tall, still devastatingly handsome, with dark hair and darker eyes, and a face that belonged on magazine covers or wanted posters. But there were new lines around his mouth, a hardness in his expression that hadn't been there before. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her house, and he moved with the coiled power of a predator who'd finally cornered his prey. His eyes locked on Lena, and the world contracted to just the two of them. Lena. Her name on his lips was a prayer and an accusation, relief and rage all twisted together. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. After 5 years of running from this moment, here it was, and she had no idea what to say. Marco's gaze swept over her, taking in the cheap waitress uniform, the small house, the life she'd built from scraps. 5 years, he said softly. I thought you were dead. I needed you to think that. Why? It was such a simple question. It deserved a simple answer. But there was nothing simple about why she'd run, why she'd hidden, why she'd kept the biggest secret of all. Marco took a step into the room, and his men shifted to let him pass. His eyes were still on Lena, searching her face for answers she didn't want to give. I looked everywhere, turned over every rock, called in every favor. I thought someone had taken you, killed you. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I'm sorry, Lena whispered, and meant it. Are you? Marco's voice went cold, the warmth draining out of it like water from a cracked glass. Because you look alive to me. You look like you've been living a whole life I knew nothing about. Under the bed, Lena heard a small sound, Ethan shifting, trying to see what was happening. Marco's head snapped toward the noise, his entire body going still. What was that? Nothing. Lena. Her name was a warning now. What was that? She could lie. She could try to protect them for just a few more seconds, keep them hidden and safe and hers. But Marco's lieutenant was already moving toward the bed, already reaching down, and Lena knew the moment of truth had arrived. Wait, she said desperately. Marco, wait, I can explain. But it was too late. The lieutenant was pulling back the bed skirt, revealing two small, terrified faces staring up at him with eyes the exact shade of Marco DeLuca's. The silence that fell was absolute. Marco went very, very still. Lena watched the realization move across his face like a wave. Shock, disbelief, recognition, rage, and something that might have been grief, all crashing together in a storm she'd caused. He moved forward slowly, like a man in a dream, and dropped to his knees beside the bed. The twins shrank back, pressing themselves against the wall, but Marco didn't reach for them. He just stared, his face draining of color. How old? His voice was barely a whisper. 5. 5. Marco's hands were shaking. Lena had seen him kill men without flinching, had watched him negotiate million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but now his hands shook like leaves in a storm. I have children. I have 5-year-old children, and you never told me. I was trying to protect them. From what? Marco's head whipped toward her, and the fury in his eyes was terrible to behold. From me? You thought I would hurt my own children? From your world, from the people who want you dead, who would use them as weapons against you. So instead you stole them. Marco's voice cracked on the word. You took my children, and you hid them from me, and you let me think. He stopped, his jaw working as he fought for control. You let me think I had nothing. Under the bed, Emma started to cry, soft, frightened sounds that broke Lena's heart. Marco's expression shifted immediately. He turned back to the children, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentle, impossibly gentle, coming from a man who'd built an empire on violence. Hey, he said softly, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. Who are you? Ethan demanded, his small voice trying so hard to be brave. Marco looked at Lena, a question in his eyes that she had no idea how to answer. What was she supposed to say? How did you tell your 5-year-old children that the stranger in their bedroom was their father, that he was dangerous and powerful and had every right to be furious at the life they'd been denied? This is Marco, Lena said finally, her voice breaking. He's your father. The twins stared at Marco with identical expressions of confusion and fear. Emma's crying got louder. Ethan pressed closer to his sister, protective even at 5 years old. Marco's face did something complicated. I'm your dad, he said, testing out the word like it was foreign. I didn't know about you, but I'm here now. We don't have a dad, Emma sobbed. Mom said he went away. I did, Marco said, his eyes never leaving theirs. But I'm back, and I'm not going anywhere ever again. It was a promise and a threat, directed at the children and at Lena in equal measure. Lena felt her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. 5 years of running, of hiding, of building a safe life in the shadows. All of it was dust now. Marco had found them, and Marco never let go of what was his. Please, she said quietly. Can we talk? Alone? Marco stood slowly, his movements careful, like he was afraid of spooking the children, or maybe afraid of what he might do if he moved too quickly. Get them out from under there. We're leaving. We're not going anywhere with you. Yes, Marco said, his voice hard as iron. You are. All 3 of you, because every enemy I have now knows about them. He gestured toward the twins. My lieutenant recognized you at a diner this morning. By now, word will have spread. Your faces are probably already being circulated. So you can come with me willingly, where I can protect you, or you can stay here and wait for the people who want me dead to show up and use my children as leverage. Lena's blood ran cold because she knew he was right. The moment Marco's world learned about the twins, they'd become the most valuable targets on the planet. Every rival, every enemy, every ambitious lieutenant looking to take Marco down would see 2 small children as the perfect weakness to exploit. She'd kept them safe by keeping them secret, but that secret was out now, and there was no putting it back. How do I know you won't hurt them? Lena asked. Marco's expression was almost pitying. Because they're mine. I would burn the world down before I let anyone harm my children. Even you should know that. He was right. Whatever else Marco DeLuca was, criminal, killer, monster, he was loyal to his own with a ferocity that bordered on religious, and now the twins were his own. Lena knelt beside the bed, looking at her baby's frightened faces. Come on out, sweethearts. It's okay. They crawled out slowly, staying close to Lena, eyeing Marco with suspicion. He looked down at them, and Lena saw his throat work as he swallowed hard. They look like you, he said hoarsely. They have your eyes. Yeah. Marco crouched down again, bringing himself to the twins' eye level. What are your names? Ethan and Emma looked at Lena for permission. She nodded, her heart in her throat. I'm Ethan, her son said quietly. This is Emma. Ethan and Emma, Marco repeated like he was memorizing the syllables. Those are good names. Mom picked them, Emma offered, still clinging to Lena's leg. She did a good job. Marco's smile was painful to witness. Do you know what a dad is supposed to do? They shook their heads. A dad is supposed to protect his kids, keep them safe, make sure nothing bad ever happens to them. Marco's voice was steady, but Lena could see the emotion roiling beneath the surface. I didn't get to do that for 5 years, but I'm going to do it now. Is that okay? Ethan considered this with the gravity of someone much older. Are you really our dad? I am. Where have you been? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Marco's eyes flicked to Lena, and the look in them made her want to disappear. I didn't know about you, he said carefully, but I do now, and I'm not going to miss any more. We have to pack, Emma said suddenly, remembering their interrupted adventure. We're going on a trip. That's right, Marco agreed. We're all going on a trip, somewhere safe. He stood, offering his hand to Lena. She stared at it for a long moment. That hand that had held her, hurt others, built an empire of blood and money. Taking it meant accepting his protection. It meant walking back into the world she'd fled. But what choice did she have? Lena took his hand and Marco pulled her to her feet. His grip was firm, possessive, and when he looked at her, she saw everything they'd been and everything she'd destroyed by running. We need to talk, he said quietly, about a lot of things. I know. But first, we get them somewhere safe. Marco turned to his men. Vittorio, bring the car around. Marco, wait outside. I want a perimeter on this house until we're clear. His lieutenant nodded and stepped out, phone already in hand. The other men followed, leaving Marco and Lena alone with the twins. I have a place upstate, Marco said. Secure, no one knows about it except my most trusted people. We'll go there until I can assess the situation. And then what? And then we figure out what happens next. Marco's jaw tightened. You and I are going to have a very long conversation about the last 5 years. I know. I'm so angry with you right now, I can barely see straight. I know that too. Marco took a breath, visibly fighting for control. But we do this for them. Whatever's between us, we don't let it touch them. Agreed? Lena nodded, relief flooding through her. Agreed. The twins were watching this exchange with wide eyes, trying to understand the currents flowing between the adults. Marco noticed and softened his expression. Who wants to ride in a really cool car? He asked them. That got their attention. How cool? Ethan asked cautiously. The coolest? It has screens in the back and buttons that do all sorts of things. Despite everything, Emma's face lit up. Can I push the buttons? You can push all the buttons you want. Just like that, he'd won them over. Lena watched Marco charm her children with the same effortless charisma he'd used on her 5 years ago, and her heart twisted with a complicated mix of emotions she couldn't begin to name. They gathered the twins' things quickly. Marco moved through the house with professional efficiency, his eyes cataloging every detail of the life Lena had built. She could see him noting the threadbare furniture, the bills on the counter, the photographs of the twins that didn't include him. You struggled, he said quietly, finding her in the hallway. It wasn't a question. We managed. You should have told me. I would have... What? Sent money? Shown up with your world and your enemies and your violence? Lena shook her head. I made a choice, Marco. Maybe it was the wrong one, but I made it to keep them safe. Safe, Marco repeated, his voice bitter. Look where that got you, living in a town that doesn't even have a stoplight, working yourself to death in a diner, raising our children alone. That's not safe, Lena. That's just slow suffering. Maybe he was right. Maybe all her running had just been another kind of prison. The car was waiting outside, a black SUV with tinted windows and enough armor to survive a small war. Marco's men formed a protective cordon as they hustled the twins into the back seat. Emma and Ethan climbed in with wide eyes, already reaching for the screens Marco had promised. Lena started to follow, but Marco caught her arm. I need you to understand something, he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. What you did, taking them, hiding them, part of me wants to punish you for it, wants to make you feel even a fraction of what I felt when I thought you were gone. Lena's throat tightened. I know, but I won't because they need you and because... Marco's grip on her arm tightened fractionally. Because, despite everything, I still... He stopped, shook his head. Let her go. Just get in the car. Lena slid into the back seat beside her children, her heart pounding. Marco got in on the other side, sandwiching the twins between them. His presence filled the space, overwhelming and inescapable. The car pulled away from the curb, from the little house that had been their sanctuary, from the life Lena had tried so hard to build. In the rearview mirror, she watched Millbrook disappear, this forgettable town that had kept them hidden for 5 precious years. Emma leaned against her, warm and solid and trusting. On the other side, Ethan was staring at Marco with open curiosity, his fear beginning to give way to fascination. Marco stared back, and Lena saw him cataloging every detail, the shape of Ethan's face, the curl of Emma's hair, every similarity and difference that marked them as his. Why did you leave? Ethan asked suddenly. Marco's eyes cut to Lena, a clear warning. How do we answer this? She didn't know. How did you explain adult complications to children who still believed in fairy tales? Sometimes, Lena said carefully, grown-ups make mistakes. I was scared, and I ran away when I should have stayed. Were you scared of Dad? The question hung in the air. Marco waited for her answer, his expression unreadable. No, Lena said, and realized it was true. She'd never been afraid of Marco himself, only of his world, his enemies, the violence that followed him like a shadow. I was scared of other things, but I should have trusted your dad to protect us. Marco's hand found hers in the space between them. His fingers laced with hers, a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. I'm going to protect you now, he said, speaking to all of them. All 3 of you. I promise. It was a promise that would cost him dearly, Lena knew. A promise that might drag them all down into the darkness. But as they drove toward whatever future awaited them, she found herself believing him anyway. Because Marco DeLuca always kept his promises, even when they burned the whole world down. The safe house sat like a fortress in the mountains, 3 hours north of anywhere that mattered. Lena watched through the SUV's tinted windows as they wound up a private road carved through dense forest, the kind of isolation that money could buy and paranoia demanded. Iron gates swung open at their approach, controlled by guards she couldn't see but knew were there. Marco's world had always been like this. Layers of security wrapped around layers of secrets, protection and imprisonment wearing the same face. The twins had fallen asleep an hour ago, Emma's head on Lena's lap, and Ethan curled against Marco's side like it was the most natural thing in the world. Marco had gone rigid when the boy first leaned into him, his hand hovering uncertainly before finally settling on Ethan's shoulder. Lena had watched the transformation on his face, wonder and terror, and something fierce that might have been love taking root in real time. Now, as the car pulled to a stop in front of a sprawling estate that looked more like a fortress than a home, Marco carefully extracted himself from Ethan's sleeping form. I'll carry him, he said quietly. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to maintain that barrier between Marco and her children, but the look on his face stopped her. He'd missed 5 years. 5 years of first steps and first words, of scraped knees and bedtime stories. She'd stolen all of that from him, and watching him lift Ethan with the careful reverence of someone holding something infinitely precious made guilt claw at her insides. She gathered Emma into her arms, and together they walked into the house. The interior was elegant but impersonal, decorated by someone with excellent taste and no emotional investment. Marble floors, expensive art, furniture that looked beautiful and uncomfortable. A woman in her 50s appeared from a side hallway, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her expression professionally neutral. "Mr. DeLuca," she said with a slight nod. "The rooms are prepared." "Thank you, Maria." Marco adjusted his grip on Ethan, his movements awkward but determined. "This is Lena, and these are my children." Maria's eyes widened fractionally, the only crack in her professional composure. "I see. Welcome, Ms. Volkov. If you need anything at all, please let me know." She led them upstairs to a wing that had clearly been hastily prepared for children. 2 bedrooms with connecting doors, already equipped with beds and basic furniture, though lacking the personal touches that made a space feel lived in. Lena laid Emma down in one bed while Marco placed Ethan in the other, both of them tucking in their children with the synchronized awkwardness of strangers performing an intimate ritual. Emma stirred as Lena pulled the blanket up. "Mommy? I'm here, baby. Where are we?" "Somewhere safe. Go back to sleep." Emma's eyes drifted closed again, her breathing evening out. Lena smoothed her daughter's hair back and tried not to think about all the time she'd done this alone, in that tiny house in Millbrook, wondering if Marco was alive or dead, if he ever thought about her, if she'd made the right choice. She turned to find Marco standing in the doorway between the rooms, watching Ethan sleep with an expression that made her chest tight. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Yeah." Marco didn't look away from his son. "We do." They left the children sleeping and moved downstairs to Marco's study, a room dominated by dark wood and darker secrets, the kind of space where empires were built and enemies were destroyed. Marco poured himself a scotch and offered one to Lena. She shook her head. "I need to stay clear-headed." "Suit yourself." Marco downed half the glass in one swallow, then set it down with careful control. 5 years, Lena. You owe me an explanation." She'd known this conversation was coming, had dreaded it every day for 5 years. Now that it was here, she didn't know where to start. "I was pregnant," she said finally. 3 months. You were in the middle of that war with the Kozlov family. People were dying every week. Your own second-in-command got shot in your living room while I was in the next room. Do you remember that?" Marco's jaw tightened. "I remember. I realized that night that I couldn't raise a child in that world, that any child of yours would be a target from the moment they were born. So I left. You could have told me. We could have figured something out." "Like what?" Lena's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "You were never going to leave that life, Marco, and I was never going to watch our children grow up surrounded by violence, wondering every day if someone was going to use them to hurt you. So instead you let me think you were dead." Marco's control cracked, anger bleeding through. "I mourned you, Lena. I tore apart half the city looking for whoever took you. I killed people because I thought they might know something about what happened to you." The words hit like bullets. Lena had known, intellectually, that her disappearance would hurt him, but hearing it laid out like this, the destruction she'd caused, the blood spilled in her name, made her stomach turn. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Sorry doesn't give me back 5 years with my children." "I know." Marco turned away, his hands gripping the edge of his desk hard enough that his knuckles went white. "When were you going to tell me? Ever? Or were you just going to let them grow up thinking their father abandoned them?" "I told them you went away, that you couldn't be with us." "That's almost worse." Marco's laugh was bitter. "At least abandonment is a choice. You made me a ghost." Lena moved closer, drawn by the pain in his voice despite everything. "I was trying to protect them. From me. From your world. There's a difference." "Is there?" Marco finally turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes made her breath catch. "Because from where I'm standing, you didn't trust me to be their father. You didn't believe I could keep them safe." "You couldn't," Lena said gently. "Not in that life. You know I'm right, Marco. You know what would have happened if the Kozlovs or the Bratva or any of your other enemies found out you had children? They would have become weapons against you. And now they know anyway, because you got careless." The accusation stung because it was true. 5 years of careful hiding, undone by a cup of coffee in the wrong diner. "What happens now?" Lena asked. Marco drained the rest of his scotch. "Now I deal with the threat. Every family, every organization, every small-time operator who might think my children are an opportunity, they need to understand what happens if they even look at Ethan and Emma wrong. You're going to start a war. I'm going to prevent one. Marco's voice went cold, taking on the edge that meant he'd already made his decision. I'll send out word through the usual channels. My children are under my protection. Anyone who harms them, threatens them, or uses them in any way dies. Not just them, their families, their associates, everyone they've ever cared about. Scorched earth. Lena's blood ran cold. This was the Marco she'd run from, the one who solved problems with violence, who saw the world in terms of threats and assets, who would burn everything down to protect what was his. But he was also the only thing standing between the twins and a world full of people who would exploit them without hesitation. How long do we have to stay here? She asked. As long as it takes to make the message stick. A few weeks, maybe more. Marco moved to the window, looking out at the grounds. They'll need guards. Full-time protection even after we leave here. School will have to be private, vetted. Every person who comes into contact with them will be background checked. That's not a life, that's a prison. That's reality. Marco's reflection in the window was hard, uncompromising. You wanted to protect them from my world? Well, they're in it now. This is what protection looks like. Lena sank into one of the leather chairs, exhaustion crashing over her. They're going to hate this. They're 5. They'll adapt. Marco turned back to her. You're the one who's going to struggle. He was right. The twins had each other, had the resilience of children who didn't fully understand the danger. But Lena had spent 5 years building a life of careful anonymity, and now she was back in the spotlight of Marco's world, exposed and vulnerable. I need your promise, she said suddenly. What kind of promise? That you won't shut me out, that I'm still their mother, no matter what happens between us. Lena's voice shook. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I'm asking anyway. Don't take them from me, Marco. Please. Something in Marco's expression softened. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her chair, bringing them eye to eye. This close, she could see the lines that 5 years had etched around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair. He'd aged, and she wondered how much of that was her fault. I'm not going to take them from you, he said quietly. Whatever else I am, I'm not cruel enough to do that. They need you. And I need... He stopped, his jaw working. I need to figure out how to be their father. I don't know how to do this, Lena. I don't know how to be what they need. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open inside her. This was the Marco she'd fallen in love with, the one who showed her his uncertainties in the quiet moments, who let her see beneath the armor. You start by being there, Lena said softly. By showing up every day, by learning who they are. Will you help me? It was such a simple question, but it carried the weight of everything unspoken between them. Helping him meant staying close, meant building something that looked like co-parenting, meant navigating the complicated territory between their past and whatever future they might have. Yes, Lena said, I'll help you. Marco's hand found hers, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. I missed you. Even when I was furious, even when I thought I hated you for leaving, I missed you every single day. Lena's throat tightened. Marco, I'm not saying this to manipulate you. I just need you to know. His eyes searched hers. 5 years, and I never stopped looking, never stopped hoping. Does that make me pathetic? It makes you human. I'm not sure I'm allowed to be human anymore. Lena reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw. You're their father. That makes you human whether you like it or not. Marco leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. When they opened again, they were full of a longing that made her heart ache. I want to kiss you. That's probably a bad idea. Most of my ideas are bad ideas. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Hasn't stopped me yet. Marco, we can't just... I know all the reasons this is complicated. He pulled back, putting distance between them. But tell me you didn't feel it too. In the car, when you took my hand, tell me the last 5 years erased everything we were. Lena couldn't, because it would be a lie, and they'd already had too many lies between them. What we were doesn't matter, she said instead. What matters is figuring out how to do this for them. You're right. Marco stood, running a hand through his hair in frustration. You're absolutely right. The kids come first. A phone buzzed. Marco pulled it out, his expression darkening as he read the message. What is it? Kozlov. Marco's voice went flat, dangerous. He knows. He's already making moves. Lena's blood turned to ice. Viktor Kozlov had been Marco's enemy 5 years ago, the architect of the war that had driven her away. If he knew about the twins, what kind of moves? He's reaching out to smaller families, building alliances. He thinks he can use my children as leverage to force me out. Marco's jaw clenched. He's wrong. Marco, you can't. I can and I will. He was already moving toward the door, his entire demeanor shifting into something cold and lethal. I'm calling a meeting. Every family head, every major player, they need to hear this directly from me. What are you going to tell them? Marco paused at the door, looking back at her. That my children are my line in the sand. Cross it, and I'll show them exactly why people fear my name. He left, and Lena was alone in the study with her racing thoughts and her pounding heart. This was what she'd run from, the casual way Marco spoke about violence, the ease with which he shifted from father to monster and back again. But it was also what would keep the twins safe. She went back upstairs to check on them. Both were still sleeping peacefully, unaware that their existence had already set dangerous wheels in motion. Lena sat in the chair between their rooms and watched them breathe, these perfect little humans she'd created and protected and loved with every fiber of her being. I'm sorry, she whispered to their sleeping forms. I'm so sorry I brought you into this. Morning came with pale sunlight filtering through expensive curtains. Lena woke to find Emma standing beside her chair, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Mommy, where are we? Hey, baby. Lena pulled Emma into her lap, breathing in the familiar scent of her daughter's hair. We're at your dad's house. The man from yesterday? Yes. Emma considered this. Is he nice? He's complicated, but he loves you very much. How can he love us? He just met us. It was such a perceptive question from someone so young. Lena struggled for an answer that would make sense to a 5-year-old mind. Sometimes love is like that, instant. The moment he saw you, he loved you. Like you loved us when we were born? Exactly like that. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his dark hair sticking up at odd angles. I'm hungry. Let's go find the kitchen. They ventured downstairs together, the twins clinging to Lena's hands. Maria appeared as if summoned, offering to make breakfast. Soon the kitchen filled with the smell of pancakes and bacon, and the twins were chattering away about the big house and the cool car and all the buttons they'd been promised they could push. Marco appeared in the doorway, freshly showered and dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept, but his face softened when he saw the twins. Good morning, he said carefully. Hi, Ethan responded through a mouthful of pancake. Don't talk with your mouth full, Lena corrected automatically. Your mom's right. Marco moved into the kitchen, accepting a cup of coffee from Maria. Can I sit with you? The twins looked at each other, conducting some silent sibling conversation, then nodded. Marco took the seat across from them, and Lena watched him try to navigate the simple act of sharing breakfast with his children. So, Marco said after a moment of awkward silence, what do you like to do, for fun? We like building things, Ethan said, forts and castles and stuff. And I like drawing, Emma added. Mom says I'm really good. I bet you are. Marco's smile was genuine, if uncertain. Maybe later you can show me some of your drawings. Emma's face lit up. Really? Really. Just like that, another wall came down. Lena watched her daughter warm to Marco, saw Ethan studying his father with open curiosity, and felt the world shifting beneath her feet. This wasn't supposed to happen. She'd spent 5 years building a life where Marco didn't exist, where the twins were hers alone. But they were connecting with him, drawn to him the way she'd once been drawn to him, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Worse, she wasn't sure she wanted to. I have to take care of some business today, Marco said, directing the comment to Lena. But I'll be back this evening. Maria will make sure you have everything you need. What kind of business? Lena asked quietly. The kind that keeps us all safe. He stood, finishing his coffee. Before he left, he paused by Emma's chair and carefully, tentatively, rested his hand on top of her head. Be good for your mom, okay? Okay, Dad. The word stopped him cold. Emma had said it so casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world, but Marco looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His hand trembled slightly before he pulled it away. I'll see you tonight, he managed, his voice rough. Lena followed him to the door. Marco, did you hear that? He turned to her and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. She called me Dad. I know. I didn't think... He stopped, gathering himself. I have to go. We'll talk later. He left in a convoy of black SUVs, surrounded by armed guards, and Lena watched from the window as her children's father went off to wage war in their name. The day passed in strange domesticity. Maria proved to be a gentle presence, showing the twins around the estate, producing art supplies and toys that appeared from nowhere. The house had a library, a game room, and grounds that stretched for acres. It was a gilded cage, but the twins were too young to see the bars. Lena tried to relax, but every car that passed on the distant road, every unfamiliar sound made her jump. She was surrounded by security, but it didn't feel safe. It felt like waiting for the hammer to fall. Evening came, and Marco returned looking grim but satisfied. He gathered them in the living room, Lena on one couch with Emma, Marco on another with Ethan naturally gravitating toward him. I've taken care of some things, Marco said. Sent messages to people who needed to hear them. You're safe here. For how long? Lena asked. As long as necessary. Marco's attention shifted to the twins. How was your day? Did Maria take good care of you? They launched into enthusiastic descriptions of everything they'd done, talking over each other in their excitement. Marco listened with an attention that was almost painful to witness, like he was trying to absorb every word, make up for 5 years of silence all at once. When they finally wound down, Marco said, I have something for you. Wait here. He disappeared and returned carrying 2 boxes. I didn't know what you'd like, so I got a few options. Inside were toys, high-end, expensive, the kind of things Lena could never afford. Building sets for Ethan, art supplies for Emma, and enough other items to fill a small store. This is too much, Lena protested. It's not enough. Marco's voice was firm. I have 5 years of birthdays and Christmases to make up for. This is just a start. The twins dove into the boxes with delighted shrieks, and Lena watched her carefully budgeted life collide with Marco's world of excess. She wanted to be angry about it, about him buying their affection, but the joy on their faces made it impossible. That night, after the twins were in bed, Lena found Marco on the terrace, staring out at the dark woods. You're spoiling them, she said. I know. It's going to make things harder when we have to go back to normal. Marco turned to her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. What if we don't? Don't what? Go back to normal. What if this becomes normal? What if you stay? Lena's heart stuttered. Marco, I'm not asking you to be with me. I'm not stupid enough to think we can just pick up where we left off. He moved closer. But we have children together. They need both of us. And maybe we could make this work. A family, even if it's not the traditional kind. You're talking about shared custody. I'm talking about building something new, something better than what we had before. Marco's hand found hers in the darkness. I'm talking about being parents together, even if we're not together. It was a reasonable proposal. Mature, even. Everything Lena should want. So why did it feel like settling for less? I need time to think, she said. Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere for a while. But even as he said it, Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Congratulations on the twins. Marco must be so proud. It would be a shame if something happened to them. VK, Lena's blood turned to ice. She showed Marco the message, watching his face go dark with rage. Kozlov, he said quietly. He's making his move. What do we do? Marco's hand tightened on hers. We end this, once and for all. And Lena knew that the fragile peace they'd been building was about to shatter. The threat changed everything. Marco's entire security apparatus mobilized within an hour of Kozlov's text, transforming the estate from a sanctuary into a war room. Men appeared from nowhere, hard-faced soldiers who spoke in clipped sentences and carried weapons with casual familiarity. Lena watched from the window as they established perimeters, checked sight lines, installed additional cameras. Her children slept upstairs, innocent and unaware that they'd become the focal point of something deadly. Marco was on his phone, his voice low and furious as he coordinated responses. Lena caught fragments, names she didn't recognize, locations that meant nothing to her, orders delivered with absolute authority. This was the Marco she'd tried to forget, the one who commanded an empire built on violence and fear. But now he was using that power to protect their children, and she couldn't decide if that made him a monster or a hero. "I want eyes on every Kozlov property," Marco said into the phone, pacing the study like a caged predator. "I want to know where Victor is, who he's talking to, what he had for breakfast. And I want a message sent to every family that even thinks about working with him. Anyone who touches my children dies slowly." He hung up and found Lena standing in the doorway. The rage on his face softened fractionally when he saw her. "You should be sleeping," he said, "like I could sleep after that text." Lena moved into the room, wrapping her arms around herself. "He knows where we are, doesn't he?" "Probably." Victor's had years to build his intelligence network. Marco poured himself a drink, his third since the message arrived. "But knowing where we are and getting to us are two different things. This estate is a fortress. He'd need an army to breach it." Does he have an army?" "He's building one." Marco's jaw tightened. "He's been quiet the last few years, letting me think the war was over, but he was just waiting for me to show weakness." "The twins." "The twins," Marco agreed bitterly. "They're the perfect leverage. He kills them, he destroys me, he kidnaps them, he controls me. Either way, he wins." Lena felt sick. "This is what I was trying to avoid. This is exactly why I ran." "I know." Marco set down his glass with careful control. "And you were right. I was too deep in that life to see it clearly. But running isn't an option anymore. Now we fight." "We? I'm not a fighter, Marco. I'm a waitress who can barely afford rent." "You're the mother of my children. That makes you one of the most important pieces on the board." Marco crossed to her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I need you to trust me, Lena. Can you do that?" She wanted to say no. Wanted to grab the twins and run again, find another small town, another anonymous life. But Kozlov knew about them now. The secret was out. Running would just make them easier targets. "What's your plan?" she asked. "I'm going to take the fight to Victor before he brings it here." Marco's eyes were hard, determined. "I've called a meeting with the other family heads for tomorrow night. I'm going to make them choose sides, me or Kozlov. The ones who choose wrong won't live to regret it." "That's going to start a war." "We're already in a war. I'm just making it official." Marco's thumb traced her cheekbone, a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. "I need you to stay here with the twins. Keep them calm, keep them safe. Can you do that?" "What if something happens to you?" "It won't." "Marco, it won't," he repeated more forcefully. "I've survived worse than Victor Kozlov. I'm not leaving my children fatherless, not when I just found them." Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust in his strength and his ruthlessness and his absolute conviction. But she'd seen too many bodies, heard too many stories of men who thought themselves invincible right up until the moment they weren't. "Promise me," she said quietly. "Promise me you'll come back." "I promise." Marco leaned down and pressed his forehead against hers, his breath warm on her lips. "Nothing in this world will keep me from them, from you." It wasn't quite a kiss, but it carried the same weight. All the history between them, all the complicated feelings neither of them knew how to name, compressed into that single point of contact. Lena's eyes closed, and for a moment she let herself remember what it felt like to be loved by Marco De Luca. The intensity of it, the consuming certainty that she was the center of his universe. Then he pulled away, and the moment shattered. "Get some sleep," Marco said, his voice rough. "Tomorrow's going to be difficult." He was wrong. Tomorrow started being difficult at 3 a.m, when Emma woke up screaming from a nightmare. Lena ran to her daughter's room, her heart pounding, half expecting to find Kozlov's men already breaching the walls. But it was just Emma, sitting up in bed with tears streaming down her face, her small body shaking with sobs. "Baby, what's wrong?" Lena gathered Emma into her arms, rocking her gently. "There were bad men." Emma hiccuped against her shoulder. They were trying to take us away, and you couldn't stop them. Lena's blood ran cold. Children were intuitive, sensitive to tensions adults thought they hid. Emma might not understand the specifics of their situation, but she felt the danger lurking beneath the surface. It was just a dream, sweetheart. No one's going to take you anywhere. Promise? I promise. Lena held her tighter, whispering reassurances that felt like lies. Mommy's here and your dad is here, and we're going to keep you safe no matter what. Emma's crying gradually subsided, replaced by shaky breaths and small hiccups. Lena was settling her back under the covers when Marco appeared in the doorway, his hair disheveled and his shirt half unbuttoned, like he'd dressed in a hurry. I heard her scream, he said quietly. Is she okay? Nightmare. Lena smoothed Emma's hair back. She's fine now. Marco moved into the room, his movements tentative, like he wasn't sure he had the right to be there. Emma looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Dad, will you stay until I fall asleep? The words still hit him like a physical blow. Lena watched Marco struggle to compose himself, saw the fierce love and desperate fear warring across his features. Of course, he said, his voice unsteady. I'll stay as long as you want. He sat on the edge of Emma's bed, and she reached for his hand with the unconscious trust of a child who'd already decided he was safe. Marco held her small hand in his much larger one, and Lena saw him blink rapidly against tears he'd never let fall. Tell me a story? Emma asked, already drowsy again. Marco looked helplessly at Lena. She could see the panic in his eyes. He didn't know any children's stories, hadn't read bedtime tales or learned the rituals of parenthood. Make one up, Lena suggested gently. Tell her about something you loved when you were little. Marco was silent for a long moment, thinking. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost dreamlike. When I was your age, my grandfather had a restaurant by the water. It wasn't fancy, just a small place with checkered tablecloths and the best pasta you've ever tasted. On Sundays, all the family would gather there, and Nonno would cook for hours, singing old Italian songs while the sauce simmered. Emma's eyes were already drooping, but she mumbled, What happened to it? It closed down a long time ago, but I remember how it felt to be there, safe and warm, with everyone I loved around me. Marco's thumb traced circles on Emma's palm. That's what I want for you and your brother. That feeling of being home. Are we home now? Emma asked sleepily. Marco's eyes met Lena's across the bed, the question hanging between them loaded with meaning. Yeah, baby, he said finally. You're home. Emma drifted off within minutes, her breathing evening out into the deep rhythm of sleep. But Marco didn't move, didn't let go of her hand. Lena watched him sit there in the dim light, this dangerous man brought to his knees by a 5-year-old's trust. You're good at this, she said softly. I'm terrified, Marco admitted. Every second, I'm terrified I'm going to do something wrong, say something that hurts them. I don't know how to be what they need. None of us do. We just figure it out as we go. You make it look easy. It's not. Lena moved around the bed to stand beside him. I've been doing this alone for 5 years, and I still second-guess every decision. Still wake up at night wondering if I'm screwing them up somehow. Marco finally looked at her. You're an amazing mother, Lena. They're lucky to have you. They deserve to have you too. Something shifted in Marco's expression. Hope, maybe, or determination. I'm going to make sure they get the chance. I'm going to end this thing with Kozlov, and then I'm going to figure out how to be the father they deserve. In that order? In that order. Marco carefully extracted his hand from Emma's, standing slowly so as not to wake her. Come on, let's let her sleep. They moved to the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind them. The house was silent around them. Everyone else asleep, just the two of them standing in the darkness like ghosts haunting their own past. I don't want to leave you tomorrow, Marco said abruptly. I don't want to walk into that meeting knowing Victor might make a move while I'm gone. Then don't go. I have to. If I show fear, if I hesitate, every enemy I have will see it as weakness. The only way to keep the twins safe long-term is to make an example of Victor. Show everyone what happens when they threaten my family. Lena knew he was right, but it didn't make the fear any easier to swallow. What if it's a trap? What if he's expecting you to come after him? Then I spring the trap and deal with the consequences. Marco's hand cupped her face, his touch achingly gentle. I've been doing this a long time, Lena. I know how to survive. So did a lot of dead men. Is that concern I hear? Do you actually care if something happens to me? Don't. Lena pulled away from his touch. Don't make this about us. This is about the twins. Is it? Marco challenged. Because from where I'm standing, this feels like it's about a lot more than just the twins. We can't do this right now. Then when? When are we going to talk about the fact that you still feel something for me? That I still feel something for you? It doesn't matter what we feel. Lena's voice rose slightly, then dropped as she remembered the sleeping children. We had our chance and it ended. We can't go back. I'm not trying to go back. I'm trying to go forward. Marco moved closer, backing her against the hallway wall. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I've done terrible things, that my world is dark and violent and everything you ran from. But I also know that those kids in there deserve to have both their parents. And maybe we deserve a chance to figure out what that looks like. Lena's heart was racing, her body responding to his proximity in ways her mind said were dangerous. Marco, tell me you don't feel it. Tell me the last 5 years erased everything, and I'll back off. I'll give you all the space you need. She couldn't, because it would be a lie, and they'd had enough lies between them to last a lifetime. I feel it, she admitted quietly. But feeling something and acting on it are different things. We can't just pick up where we left off like nothing happened. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a chance to build something new, something better. While you're at war with Viktor Kozlov, while our children are targets, that's your idea of timing? Marco's laugh was bitter. My timing has always been shit. But yeah, right now, in the middle of this mess, that's what I'm asking. Because I don't know if we'll get another chance, and I'm tired of living with regrets. He was right. Lena had spent 5 years regretting her choices, wondering what might have been if she'd stayed, if she'd fought for them instead of running. Now here he was, offering her exactly what she'd dreamed about in her darkest moments. A second chance, a new beginning. But at what cost? Ask me again when this is over, she said finally. When Viktor is dealt with and the twins are safe. When we're not running on adrenaline and fear. Ask me then, and I'll give you an answer. Marco studied her face in the dim light, searching for something she wasn't sure she could give him. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, when this is over. He stepped back, giving her space to breathe. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hard enough without you being exhausted. He left her standing in the hallway, her heart still racing, her mind spinning with possibilities and fears in equal measure. Morning came too soon. Lena woke to find both twins in bed with her, having apparently migrated during the night. They were tangled together like puppies, Emma's arm thrown across Ethan's chest, both of them breathing in peaceful synchronization. She lay there watching them, memorizing every detail, the curve of Emma's cheek, the impossible length of Ethan's eyelashes, the way they fit together like two halves of a whole. When they finally stirred, Lena herded them downstairs for breakfast. Marco was already in the kitchen, dressed in a dark suit that made him look both elegant and dangerous. He'd clearly been up for hours. There were papers spread across the table, his laptop open to what looked like surveillance feeds. Morning, he said, clearing the table quickly as the twins bounded in. How did everyone sleep? We slept with Mommy, Ethan announced. I had a dream about dinosaurs. Good dinosaurs or scary dinosaurs? Good ones. They were my friends. Marco smiled, genuine warmth breaking through his preoccupied expression. That's a much better dream than scary ones. They ate breakfast together, Marco fielding questions from the twins about everything from why the sky was blue to whether dragons were real. He answered with surprising patience, and Lena realized he was memorizing this too, storing away these ordinary moments like treasures against whatever darkness the day might bring. After breakfast, Marco pulled Lena aside while Maria distracted the twins with a nature documentary. The meeting's at 8 tonight, he said quietly. I should be back by midnight at the latest. Should be? Will be, Marco corrected. I'm leaving Vittorio here as head of security. He's been with me for 15 years. I trust him with my life. More importantly, I trust him with yours. What do I tell the twins when they ask where you are? Tell them I have work. Tell them I'll see them tomorrow. Marco's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Keep them inside. Keep them calm. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you get them to the panic room. Vittorio knows where it is. There's a panic room. There are 3. This house was designed for exactly this kind of situation. Marco's expression was grim. I'm hoping you won't need them, but I don't take chances with your safety. Lena nodded, her throat tight with fear she didn't want to voice. Be careful. Always. Marco hesitated, then leaned in and pressed a kiss to her forehead. I'll come back to you, I promise. He said goodbye to the twins with a casualness that belied the tension in his shoulders. Ethan got a hair ruffle and a promise to play catch when Marco returned. Emma got a hug that lasted just a beat too long, like Marco was trying to imprint the feeling of holding his daughter into his memory. Then he was gone. A convoy of SUVs disappearing down the long driveway, and Lena was left with her children and a house full of armed guards and a fear that sat like lead in her stomach. She kept the twins busy all day. They played games, drew pictures, built elaborate structures with blocks that Maria produced from somewhere. Lena read them stories and helped them create an imaginary world where everything was safe and nothing could hurt them. She was performing normalcy, and the twins seemed to buy it, their laughter genuine even if hers was forced. But as the afternoon wore into evening, Lena found it harder to maintain the facade. Every car on the distant road made her jump. Every shadow seemed sinister. The security guards were professional, but their very presence was a reminder of the danger circling them. Dinner was quieter. The twins picked at their food, sensing Lena's tension even if they didn't understand it. When's Dad coming back? Emma asked. Later tonight, baby. After you're asleep. Will he be here when we wake up? Yes, Lena said with more confidence than she felt. He'll be here. She put them to bed at the usual time, reading extra stories and singing extra songs, anything to keep them calm and distracted. Ethan fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's activities. But Emma was restless, her dark eyes, Marco's eyes, watching Lena with unsettling perception. Mommy, are you scared? Lena's heart clenched. A little bit, sweetie, but that's okay. Sometimes grown-ups get scared too. What are you scared of? How did she answer that? How did she explain to a 5-year-old that she was terrified of losing the man she'd spent 5 years running from? That she was scared of the violence that defined his world, scared of the enemies who saw their children as weapons, scared of the future that was rushing toward them whether they were ready or not. I'm scared of things changing, Lena said finally. But change isn't always bad. Sometimes it's just scary because it's new. Emma considered this with the gravity of childhood wisdom. Is Dad part of the change? Yes, a big part. I like him, Emma said simply. He makes you smile different. Different how? Like you're happy and sad at the same time. Out of the mouths of babes, Emma had summarized in one sentence what Lena had been struggling to articulate for days. That's very perceptive, baby. Now close your eyes and sleep. Everything will be better in the morning. It was a lie, but a comforting one. Emma's eyes drifted closed, and Lena sat with her until she was sure both twins were deeply asleep. Downstairs, she found Vittorio doing a security sweep. He was a bear of a man, 6.5 feet of muscle and tactical awareness, but his eyes were kind when he looked at her. Everything quiet? Lena asked. So far. Boss should be at the meeting by now. Vittorio checked his watch. Couple more hours and he'll be heading back. Do you think Victor will try something tonight? If he's smart, he won't. Marco made sure every entrance to that building is covered by our people. Victor would have to be suicidal to make a move there. And if he's not smart? Vittorio's expression hardened. Then we deal with it. That's what we're paid for. Lena poured herself a cup of coffee she didn't want and sat in the kitchen watching the clock tick toward 8. She imagined Marco walking into that meeting. Imagined the other family heads watching him with calculating eyes, weighing loyalty against opportunity. Victor would be there, smiling his cold smile, playing whatever game he'd planned. The night stretched on. 8 became 9, then 10. Lena tried to read but couldn't focus, tried to watch television, but the noise felt intrusive. She ended up back at the window, staring out at the dark grounds, waiting for headlights that didn't come. At 11:30, her phone rang. Lena's heart stopped when she saw it was Marco's number. He shouldn't be calling. He should be in the car, driving home, safe and whole and alive. Marco? Lena. His voice was tight with pain. There's been a complication. What kind of complication? Are you hurt? Victor made his move. We were ready for it, but... Marco's breath hitched. It got messy. I'm okay, but I'm going to be later than expected. How much later? I don't know. Few hours, maybe. I need to clean up this mess. Voices shouted in the background, urgent and angry. Listen, I need you to stay alert. This might have been a distraction. Victor might try something at the estate while I'm tied up here. Lena's blood turned to ice. You think he's coming here? I think it's possible. I'm sending additional security your way, but they won't arrive for at least an hour. Marco's voice was strained. Get the twins to the panic room. Do it now. Marco. Now, Lena. The fear in his voice was what convinced her. Marco DeLuca didn't scare easily. Vittorio knows the protocol. Let him handle this. Just keep our children safe. The line went dead. Lena ran for the stairs, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. She burst into the twins' room to find them still sleeping peacefully, unaware that their world was about to explode again. Babies, wake up. Lena shook them gently. We need to go on another adventure. Emma blinked awake, confused. Mommy, it's nighttime. I know, sweetheart, but we need to move right now. Ethan sat up, rubbing his eyes. Where's Dad? He'll meet us later. Come on, both of you. Quickly now. She hurried them out of bed, not bothering with shoes or proper clothes. Vittorio appeared in the hallway, his expression grim. Boss called you too? He said panic room. This way. Vittorio led them through the house at a near run, the twins struggling to keep up. They went down a hallway Lena had never noticed, through a door disguised as a bookshelf, down a set of stairs that descended into reinforced concrete. The panic room was surprisingly large, more of a panic apartment, really. It had beds, a bathroom, food and water supplies, and monitors showing feeds from every security camera on the property. Stay here, Vittorio ordered. Don't open this door for anyone but me or the boss. Understand? What's happening? Lena demanded. Hopefully nothing. But if Kozlov's people are coming, they'll have to go through me first. He left, the heavy steel door swinging shut with a finality that made Lena's stomach drop. The electronic lock engaged with a series of clicks and beeps, and then they were sealed in, safe but trapped. The twins huddled against Lena on one of the beds, their earlier sleepiness replaced by fear. On the monitors, Lena watched Vittorio and his team take up defensive positions throughout the house. They moved with military precision, checking weapons, securing entry points, preparing for war. Mommy, I'm scared, Emma whimpered. Me too, baby, but we're safe down here. Nobody can hurt us. Where's Dad? He's on his way. He'll be here soon. Please let that be true, Lena prayed to whatever deity might be listening. Please let him come home. On the monitors, she saw the first signs of trouble. Headlights approaching on the access road, moving too fast. Too many vehicles for a casual visit. Vittorio's voice came through an intercom, calm but urgent. We have incoming. 6 vehicles, heavy armament. This is not a drill. Lena pulled the twins closer, her heart racing. Through the cameras, she watched as the vehicles surrounded the estate, men pouring out with weapons drawn. They weren't even trying to be subtle. This was an all-out assault. Gunfire erupted. The monitors showed muzzle flashes in the darkness. Marco's security team engaging the attackers. Lena covered the twins' ears, but they could still hear the distant thunder of automatic weapons, the sharp crack of rifles, the boom of something that might have been an explosion. What's happening? Ethan shouted over the noise. The good guys are protecting us from the bad guys, Lena managed. Just like in your video games, but real. It was a terrible explanation, but it was all she had. The firefight lasted minutes that felt like hours. Lena watched men fall on both sides, watched Vittorio coordinate his defense with brutal efficiency. The attackers tried multiple entry points, but Marco's people held them off at every turn. Then the monitors showing the north entrance went dark. Lena's breath caught. That shouldn't happen. The cameras had backup power, redundant systems. The only way they'd go dark was if someone deliberately disabled them, which meant someone had breached the perimeter. Footsteps sounded above them, heavy and multiple. The twins pressed against Lena, their small bodies trembling. She held them tight, her eyes fixed on the panic room door, praying it would hold. More gunfire, closer now, shouting in languages Lena didn't understand. Then silence, sudden and absolute. The intercom crackled to life. "Mrs. DeLuca?" An unfamiliar voice, accented and cold. "I know you're down there. I know you have Marco's children with you. Be smart, open the door, and I promise no harm will come to them." Lena's blood turned to ice. Victor Kozlov. It had to be. "Mom?" Emma whispered. "Who is that?" "Nobody important, baby. We're not opening that door." "Mrs. DeLuca," the voice continued. "I have 8 of Marco's men as my prisoners. Open the door in the next 60 seconds, or I start executing them. 1 every 10 seconds until you comply." Lena's hands shook. She didn't know these men, didn't owe them anything, but they were dying to protect her children, and the weight of that was crushing. "Don't do it," Vittorio's voice came through the intercom, weak but determined. "Don't you dare open that door." 45 seconds, Victor said pleasantly. Lena looked at the monitors still functioning. She could see Vittorio on his knees, blood streaming from a head wound, surrounded by armed men. Could see other members of Marco's security team in similar positions. Young men, some barely older than boys, about to die for children they'd never met. 30 seconds. "Mommy?" Emma's voice was small, terrified. "Are people going to get hurt because of us?" "Yes," Lena wanted to say. "People are going to die because you exist, because your father is who he is, because his world is violence and blood and sacrifice." But she couldn't say that to a 5-year-old. 15 seconds, Mrs. DeLuca. I'm a patient man, but my patience has limits. Lena's hand moved toward the door controls. She couldn't let people die for her. She couldn't. Gunfire erupted again, sudden and overwhelming. The monitors showed a new group of vehicles screaming onto the property, men pouring out with military precision, Marco's reinforcements arriving exactly when needed. The attack collapsed within minutes. Victor's men scattered, running for their vehicles, leaving their dead and wounded behind. On the monitor, Lena saw Vittorio freed by one of the new arrivals, saw him pointing urgently toward the house. Then she saw Marco himself, striding through the chaos like an avenging angel, his suit torn and bloodied, his face a mask of cold fury. He was barking orders, coordinating the cleanup, and even through the grainy security footage, Lena could see the barely controlled rage radiating from him. He came for the panic room at a run. Lena heard his voice through the door, tight with fear and desperation. "Lena, open up! It's me!" She scrambled for the controls, her hands shaking so badly she could barely work them. The locks disengaged, and Marco burst through the door like a man possessed. His eyes found the twins first, cataloging them for injuries, confirming they were whole. Then he looked at Lena, and the naked relief on his face stole her breath. "You're okay," he said, more prayer than statement. "You're all okay." "We're fine." Lena stood on shaky legs. "Marco, what?" He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. The twins pressed between them, and they stood there in the panic room surrounded by the evidence of violence, holding on to each other like they were the only solid things in a world gone mad. "I thought I'd lost you," Marco said into her hair. "I thought Victor had gotten to you and We're okay," Lena repeated. "Vittorio kept us safe." "Vittorio's in bad shape, but he'll live." Marco pulled back, his hands framing Lena's face. "Victor got away. He's going to keep coming until I end this." "Then end it." The words surprised them both, but Lena meant them. She was done running, done hiding, done living in fear. If Marco's world was their world now, then she'd face it head on. "I will," Marco promised. "Tonight was the last time Victor threatens my family. I'm going to make sure of it." Emma tugged on his torn jacket. "Dad? Are the bad guys gone?" Marco knelt down, bringing himself to her level. "For now, baby, but Daddy's going to make sure they never come back, okay? You promise?" "I promise." Marco looked up at Lena, his eyes hard with determination. "All of you, Get some rest. Tomorrow, we end this war. Rest was impossible. The twins finally fell asleep sometime after 3 in the morning, exhausted by fear and adrenaline, their small bodies curled together in one of the panic room beds. Lena sat watching them, her mind replaying the attack in an endless loop. The gunfire, Victor's cold voice over the intercom, the terrible choice she'd almost made. Marco had moved upstairs to coordinate cleanup and security reinforcements, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her sleeping children. When dawn broke pale and cold through the panic room's single reinforced window, Lena found Marco in the main house surveying the damage. Bullet holes pocked the walls, windows were shattered, blood stained the marble floors in dark pools that cleaning crews were working to erase. The evidence of violence was everywhere, impossible to ignore or forget. "The twins shouldn't see this," Lena said quietly, making Marco turn. He looked like hell. His face was drawn with exhaustion, a bruise blooming along his jaw, dried blood on his collar. But his eyes were clear, focused, burning with purpose. "They won't. Maria's preparing the West Wing. No damage there. We'll keep them contained until this place is cleaned up." Marco gestured to the destruction around them. "I've got contractors coming in this afternoon. By tonight, you won't be able to tell anything happened." "And Victor?" "Gone to ground. But not for long." Marco's expression hardened. "I've got every asset I have looking for him. He'll surface eventually, and when he does, you'll kill him." It wasn't a question. Marco didn't deny it. "He tried to get to my children. There's no coming back from that." Marco moved closer, his voice dropping. "I need you to understand something, Lena. What I'm about to do, what I have to do, it's going to be brutal. It's going to be everything you ran from 5 years ago. If you want to take the twins somewhere else while I handle this, I'll arrange it. I'll make sure you're protected, that you're safe. But I won't blame you for not wanting to be here." Lena looked at the man she'd loved and left, the father of her children, the killer who would slaughter his enemies to keep them safe. 5 years ago, she would have run, would have grabbed the twins and disappeared into another anonymous life, pretending Marco's darkness couldn't touch them. But last night had taught her the futility of running. Victor had found them once. Others would find them again. The only real safety lay in eliminating the threat entirely, and Marco was the only one who could do that. "We stay," she said firmly. "The twins and I, we're staying here with you." Something flickered across Marco's face, relief, maybe, or gratitude. "You're sure?" "I'm sure, but I have conditions." "Name them. When this is over, when Victor is dead, and the threat is gone, we talk. Really talk about what happens next, what kind of life we're going to build for them." Lena held his gaze. "Because I won't raise them in constant fear, Marco. I won't let them grow up thinking violence is the only answer to every problem." "I know. I don't want that for them either." Marco's hand found hers, his grip warm and solid. "I'm going to get out, Lena. Maybe not all at once, but I'm going to transition into legitimate business. I've been laying groundwork for years. Real estate, construction, investments. The illegal side can be phased out." "Can it?" "Men like you don't just walk away from that life. Men like me also don't usually have children to live for." Marco's thumb traced circles on her palm. "I spent 5 years thinking you were dead, thinking I'd lost the only good thing in my life. Now I've got you back, and I've got 2 kids who deserve better than a father who's constantly looking over his shoulder. That's motivation enough to change." Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that Marco could transform himself, shed the violence like an old skin, and emerge as someone new. But she'd seen too much, knew too well how his world worked. Men didn't leave Marco's life, they died in it. "Just promise me one thing," she said. "Anything. Promise me you'll come back. After you go after Victor, after you do what you have to do, promise me you'll come back to us alive." Marco pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like he could shield her from the world through sheer will. "I'll come back. I've got too much to live for now to do anything stupid." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other amid the wreckage. And Lena let herself remember what it felt like to be protected by Marco DeLuca's strength, instead of threatened by it. The day passed in strange domesticity, punctuated by preparation for war. Marco's people worked around them, cleaning the damage, installing new security measures, preparing for whatever came next. The twins were confined to the West Wing, blissfully unaware of the bullet holes being patched and the blood being scrubbed away. They played with the expensive toys Marco kept producing, watched movies on the enormous television, and seemed to accept the lockdown as just another adventure. Lena envied their resilience. At 5 years old, they could bounce back from trauma that would scar adults permanently. Emma's nightmare from the night before was already fading, replaced by excitement over the indoor treasure hunt Maria had organized. Ethan was building increasingly elaborate block towers, each one taller than the last, his fear transmuted into creativity. Marco joined them for lunch, looking slightly more human after a shower and fresh clothes. He'd shaved, covered the bruise with what Lena suspected was makeup, and presented himself to his children as if nothing had happened. They greeted him with hugs and chatter, showing him their morning's accomplishments with the unself-conscious pride of children who'd decided he was safe to love. "Look, Dad, I built the tallest tower ever." Ethan gestured proudly to a structure that reached his shoulder. "That's incredible, buddy. You're a natural engineer." Marco knelt beside the tower, examining it with genuine interest. "See how you distributed the weight here? That's what keeps it stable." "Really? Really? My grandfather used to build things too. He would have loved seeing this." Emma climbed into Marco's lap uninvited, her picture book in hand. "Will you read to me?" "Of course." Marco settled her against his chest, opening the book with careful reverence. His voice was gentle as he read about talking animals and magical forests, and Lena watched father and daughter bond over a story, watched Marco discover the simple joy of being needed by someone who thought he hung the moon. When the story ended, Emma tilted her head back to look up at him. "Dad, why do you have to go away again?" Marco's expression tightened fractionally. "I have some work to finish, baby, but I'll be back before you know it." "Dangerous work?" The perception of children was terrifying sometimes. Marco glanced at Lena, silently asking how much truth to tell. "A little bit dangerous," Lena said carefully, "but your dad is very good at his job and he's going to be very careful." "I don't want you to go," Emma said, her small voice wobbling. "What if the bad men come back?" Marco set the book aside and gathered Emma fully into his arms, holding her with the fierce protectiveness of someone who'd kill to keep her safe. "Listen to me, sweetheart. The bad men aren't going to come back here. Mommy and I won't let them. And the reason I have to go is to make sure they never bother us again, understand? You're going to fight them?" "I'm going to make them go away." It was a euphemism, but Emma seemed satisfied. She snuggled closer, content in his arms, trusting that he would handle the monsters. Ethan had been listening from his position by the tower. "Are you like a superhero?" he asked suddenly. Marco's laugh was surprised and slightly bitter. "No, buddy, I'm not a hero." "But you protect people. That's what heroes do." "Sometimes protecting people means doing things that aren't very heroic." Marco's eyes found Lena's across the room. "Sometimes it means making hard choices." "Mom makes hard choices all the time," Ethan said matter-of-factly. "Like when she makes us eat vegetables even though we don't want to. She says it's because she loves us." The simple wisdom of childhood. Marco's smile was genuine now, touched with wonder. "Your mom is a very smart lady." "The smartest," Emma agreed loyally. They spent the afternoon together, a stolen pocket of normalcy before the storm. Marco taught Ethan about structural engineering through block towers. Lena and Emma made a mess in the kitchen attempting cookies that Maria eventually had to rescue. They ate dinner as a family, the four of them around the table, and for a few hours Lena could almost pretend they were normal people, living a normal life. But reality came calling as the sun set. Marco's phone rang with increasing frequency, updates from his people about Victor's location, about alliances shifting, about opportunities narrowing. Finally, as the twins were finishing dessert, Marco stood. "I have to go," he said quietly. The twins' faces fell. Emma's lower lip trembled. "But you said you'd put us to bed." "I know, baby. I'm sorry." Marco crouched beside her chair. "But I promise, next time I leave, I'll make sure to say a proper goodnight first, okay?" "You promise?" "I promise." Marco kissed her forehead, then Ethan's, his movements careful and deliberate, like he was memorizing the feeling. "Be good for your mom." "We will," they chorused. Marco straightened, his eyes finding Lena's. "Can I talk to you for a minute? Alone?" Lena nodded, following him to the hallway while Maria distracted the twins. Marco led her to his study, closing the door behind them with a soft click. "I need you to know what's going to happen tonight," he said without preamble. "We've located Victor's safe house. My people have it surrounded. I'm going in personally to end this." "Why you? Why can't you let your men handle it?" "Because Victor violated the most sacred rule. He threatened my family. If I don't handle this personally, I look weak. Every enemy I have will see it as an opening." Marco's jaw was tight with determination. "This has to be me. And if it's a trap, if Victor's expecting you, then I spring the trap and deal with it. I've survived worse odds." Marco moved closer, his hands settling on her shoulders. "But if something does go wrong, if I don't make it back—" "Don't." Lena cut him off. "Don't say it." "I have to. I've set up trusts for the twins. Everything I have goes to them, managed by trustees I trust until they're 25. You're protected too. The house in Millbrook is paid off, and there's money set aside for living expenses, education, everything you'll need. Marco, there are also letters, one for each of you. They're in the safe upstairs. Combination is your birthday." Marco's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his emotion. "I've written down everything I wanted to say, everything I need them to know about why I did what I did." Lena felt tears burning in her throat. "You're not going to die tonight." "Probably not, but I've been doing this long enough to know that every time could be the last time. I need to be prepared." Marco pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If I don't come back, don't let the twins remember me as a monster. Tell them I love them. Tell them I was trying to be better for them. Tell them yourself when you get home." "Lena?" "No." She pulled back, looking him in the eyes. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to have this maudlin goodbye like you're already dead. You're going to go deal with Victor, you're going to come home, and you're going to be here tomorrow morning to make the twins pancakes like you promised." Marco's smile was sad. "I promised pancakes?" "You will right now. Promise them and me that you'll be here tomorrow to make pancakes." "I promise," Marco said, and Lena chose to believe him. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, like a drowning man grabbing for air. Lena kissed him back with 5 years of longing and fear and love that had never quite died. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Come back to me," Lena whispered. "Come back to us." "I will. I swear it." He left through the garage, surrounded by armed men, and Lena watched from the window as the convoy of SUVs disappeared down the driveway. Then she went upstairs to put the twins to bed, carrying the weight of Marco's possible goodbye like a stone in her chest. The twins sensed her mood. They were clingy during the bedtime routine, asking repeatedly where their father had gone and when he'd be back. Lena answered with forced cheer, reading extra stories and singing extra songs until they finally drifted off. Then she went to Marco's study and poured herself a drink she didn't want but desperately needed. The house felt too large, too empty, filled with guards who were strangers. Vittorio was in the hospital, recovering from the head wound he'd sustained protecting her family. Maria had retired to her quarters. Lena was alone with her fear and the clock ticking toward midnight. She tried to read, tried to watch television, settled finally on pacing the study, her phone clutched in her hand, waiting for news she wasn't sure she wanted to receive. At 11 o'clock, gunfire erupted somewhere in the distance. Faint but unmistakable, the sound drifting through the open window like distant thunder. Lena's blood ran cold. That had to be Victor's safe house. That was Marco, doing what he did best, dispensing violence to protect what was his. The shooting lasted 10 minutes that felt like hours. Then silence fell, absolute and terrifying. Lena's phone stayed dark. No calls, no texts, no updates. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Midnight came and went. 1 in the morning, 2. She was seriously considering calling the hospitals when her phone finally buzzed. A text from Marco's number. 3 words that made her legs go weak with relief. "It's done. Coming home." Lena sank into Marco's desk chair, her whole body shaking. He was alive. He'd done what he set out to do, and he was coming home. She must have dozed off waiting, because the next thing she knew, gentle hands were shaking her awake. Lena's eyes snapped open to find Marco standing over her, backlit by the study's soft lighting. He looked like he'd been through hell, new bruises, split knuckles, blood on his clothes that she was certain wasn't his, but he was whole, breathing, alive. "Hey," he said softly. "I'm back." Lena launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck and holding on like she'd never let go. Marco caught her easily, his arms banding around her waist, his face buried in her hair. "I was so scared," Lena admitted against his shoulder. "I thought, I know. I'm sorry." Marco's hold tightened. "But it's over. Victor's dead. His organization is scattered. The threat is eliminated." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. I made certain." Marco's voice was flat, emotionless, the voice of a man who'd done terrible things and made peace with them. "No one's coming for our family. Not now. Not ever." Lena pulled back enough to look at him. "What did you do?" "What I had to." Marco's eyes were hard, haunted. "Victor and his top lieutenants won't threaten anyone again. I sent messages to every other family in the region. Touch my children, and you'll get the same." "How many?" 8. Including Victor. Marco said it without emotion, without remorse. 8 men who thought they could use my family against me. They were wrong. Lena should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual way he discussed murder, the blood on his hands, both literal and figurative. But all she felt was relief that the threat was gone, that her children could sleep without fear. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I keep my promises." Marco's hands cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "I start transitioning out of the life. I become the father Ethan and Emma deserve. I figure out how to be with you, if you'll let me." "Marco, I love you." The words tumbled out like he'd been holding them back too long. "I loved you 5 years ago. I loved you every day you were gone. And I love you now. I know I don't deserve you. I know my world is dark and dangerous and everything you tried to escape. But I love you, Lena. And I think you still love me too." He was right. Despite everything, despite 5 years and all the reasons she should run, she loved him. Had never stopped loving him, even when she'd tried to convince herself otherwise. "I do," Lena whispered. "I love you. I'm terrified and angry and still processing everything, but I love you." Marco's smile was brilliant, transforming his face from dangerous to beautiful. "Yeah? Yeah." Lena laughed through her tears. "You're an idiot, and this is probably the worst decision I've ever made, but yeah." He kissed her again, slower this time, thorough and claiming. Lena kissed him back, pouring 5 years of loneliness and longing into it, feeling something broken inside her finally start to mend. When they finally broke apart, Marco rested his forehead against hers. "I need to shower. I've got blood on me, and I don't want the twins seeing me like this." "Go. I'll wait." Marco disappeared upstairs while Lena tried to process everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. The attack, the fear, Marco leaving for what might have been the last time, his return. The declaration of love that changed everything and nothing all at once. She was still processing when Marco returned, freshly showered and dressed in clean clothes, the evidence of violence washed away. He looked more human now, less like the avenging angel who'd left, and more like the man she'd fallen in love with. "Come with me," he said, offering his hand. "I want to check on them." They went upstairs together, moving quietly through the darkened house. In the twins' room, Emma and Ethan were sleeping peacefully, unaware that their father had just killed 8 men to keep them safe. Marco stood between their beds, looking down at them with an expression of such fierce love it made Lena's chest tight. "I'd do it again," he said quietly. "I'd do worse if it meant protecting them." "I know. Does that make me a monster?" Lena considered the question carefully. "It makes you their father. And sometimes being a parent means doing monstrous things for the right reasons." Marco's hand found hers in the darkness. "I'm going to be better for them. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to start making changes. Legitimate business only. No more wars, no more violence unless there's absolutely no other choice. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm counting on it." Marco pulled her closer, his arm around her waist. "I want to build something real with you, Lena. A family, A life, a future where the twins don't have to be afraid. That's a big promise. I'm good at keeping my promises. Marco turned to face her fully. Move in with me, not here, somewhere new, somewhere that's ours. A house where the twins can grow up normal, go to good schools, have friends, play sports. A place where we can be a family. You're serious? Completely. I've already got my people looking at properties. Safe neighborhoods, good schools, everything you'd want. Marco's voice was earnest, almost pleading. I know I'm asking for a lot. I know you have every reason to say no, but I'm asking anyway. Give me a chance to prove I can be what you need, what they need. Lena looked at their sleeping children, then back at Marco. This was the moment. She could say no, could insist on maintaining separate lives connected only by shared custody. It would be safer emotionally, less complicated, more rational. But when had love ever been rational? Okay, she said softly. We'll try, but I have conditions. Name them. First, the twins come first, always. Every decision, every choice, they're the priority. Agreed. Second, you're honest with me about your business, about threats, about everything. No more secrets. I can do that. Third, you really do transition out. I won't raise them in your old world, Marco. I can't. I will. It'll take time, but I'll do it. Marco's grip on her tightened. Anything else? Just one more thing. Lena looked up at him, her heart in her throat. Promise me we'll figure this out together. No running, no hiding, no giving up when it gets hard. I promise. Together. Marco sealed the promise with a kiss, soft and sweet and full of hope. We're going to make this work, Lena. I swear it. They stood there in their children's room, holding each other in the darkness, and Lena let herself believe in second chances and new beginnings. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments when she questioned her sanity for giving Marco DeLuca another chance. But looking at the man who'd killed for their children and the children who deserved both their parents, Lena thought maybe easy was overrated. Maybe what mattered was worth fighting for, messy and complicated and real. Come on, Marco said quietly. Let's let them sleep. We've got a lot to plan tomorrow. They left the twins sleeping peacefully and went back downstairs to start planning the future. And for the first time in 5 years, Lena felt something that had been missing for so long she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Hope. Morning arrived with the twins jumping on Marco's bed at 7 o'clock sharp, their earlier fear forgotten in the resilience of childhood. Lena had fallen asleep in Marco's study sometime after 4, exhausted from planning and talking and trying to imagine a future that seemed simultaneously impossible and inevitable. She woke to find herself covered with Marco's jacket, a blanket tucked around her shoulders, and the sound of her children's laughter echoing through the house. She found them in the kitchen where Marco, true to his word, was attempting pancakes. The kitchen looked like a disaster zone. Batter on the counters, eggshells in the sink, flour dusting Marco's dark hair like premature snow. But the twins were perched on stools watching him with rapt attention, and the smile on Marco's face was worth the mess. You promised pancakes, Emma reminded him seriously. You have to keep your promises. I always keep my promises to you, baby. Marco flipped a pancake with more confidence than skill. It landed half off the griddle. Well, I try to keep my promises. Ethan giggled. Dad, you're not very good at this. I'm learning. Your mom can teach me. Marco looked up and caught Lena watching from the doorway. His smile shifted, became something warmer and more intimate. Morning. I was trying to let you sleep. I heard the chaos from upstairs. Lena moved into the kitchen, surveying the damage. Maria's going to have a heart attack when she sees this. Maria's already seen it and has wisely decided to stay out of my way. Marco gestured to the housekeeper, who was indeed watching from the doorway with barely concealed amusement. I'm establishing my domestic credentials. By destroying the kitchen? By making breakfast for my family. Marco said it with such pride that Lena couldn't help but smile. Even if the pancakes are a little wonky. They were more than a little wonky. Some were burnt, others undercooked. All were misshapen. But the twins ate them with enthusiasm, drowning them in syrup and declaring them the best pancakes ever. Marco glowed under their praise, and Lena watched him discover the simple joy of being ordinary, of being Dad instead of Don. After breakfast, while Maria supervised the twins cleaning up the mess they'd helped create, Marco pulled Lena aside. "I have meetings today," he said, "with my lawyers, my accountants, people who are going to help me transition the business. I want you there." "Me? Why?" "Because this affects you too, and because I meant what I said about no more secrets." Marco's hand found hers. "I want you to see exactly what I'm doing, understand how I'm changing things. I want your input." It was such a departure from the Marco she'd known 5 years ago, the one who'd kept his business dealings separate, who'd never asked her opinion on anything more serious than dinner reservations. This Marco was different, or trying to be, and Lena found herself wanting to support that transformation. "Okay, but the twins, Maria will watch them, and I'm bringing in additional security, people I trust completely. They'll be safe here." The meeting started at 10 and lasted most of the day. Lena sat beside Marco in his study while lawyers presented documents transferring legitimate businesses into clean corporate structures, while accountants outlined plans for divesting from illegal operations, while business consultants mapped out strategies for going straight. It was exhausting and complicated, a masterclass in how someone extricated themselves from organized crime without getting killed in the process. "The real estate holdings can be consolidated under DeLuca Properties," one lawyer explained, pointing to a spreadsheet that made Lena's head hurt. "The construction company is already legitimate. We just need to sever ties with the unions that have been providing protection." "What about the waterfront development?" Marco asked, his attention focused and sharp. "That's more complicated. Your current partners have ties to the Gambini family. We'll need to buy them out or find a way to restructure that doesn't leave them feeling cheated. I'm not paying extortion prices to get out." "Then we negotiate. Offer them something else. Maybe the distribution network in Jersey? That's been losing money anyway." They went back and forth like this for hours, dismantling Marco's criminal empire piece by piece and rebuilding it into something that could survive scrutiny. Lena listened, occasionally asking questions that the lawyers seemed surprised but pleased to answer. She was getting a crash course in high-level business, learning the language of leveraged buyouts and asset protection trusts, understanding for the first time the full scope of what Marco controlled. It was staggering. Marco wasn't just some mid-level crime boss. He was practically running a shadow government with fingers in everything from construction to shipping to real estate development. The money flowing through his organizations could fund small countries. "How long will all this take?" Lena asked during a break. "Realistically, 2 to 3 years to fully transition." Marco rubbed his temples, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. "Some things I can exit quickly. Others require careful negotiation. I've got partners who won't be happy about me going legitimate. They'll see it as betrayal or weakness." "Will they come after you?" "Some might try. That's why we're building in protections, making sure I've got leverage they can't ignore." Marco's smile was grim. "I'm not walking away broke or vulnerable. I'm restructuring from a position of strength." By late afternoon, Lena's brain was full, and her patience for corporate speak was exhausted. She excused herself to check on the twins, leaving Marco to finalize details with his legal team. She found Emma and Ethan in the game room, building an elaborate fortress out of couch cushions while Maria supervised from a comfortable chair. They'd apparently spent the day playing, napping, and generally being spoiled by a housekeeper who clearly had a soft spot for children. "Mommy!" Emma scrambled out of the fortress. "Look what we made!" "It's very impressive." Lena knelt to examine their handiwork. "Is this where you're going to live?" "It's our castle," Ethan explained. "We're prince and princess." "What does that make me?" The twins considered this seriously. "The queen," Emma decided, "and Dad is the king." "Is that how it works?" "In our castle it does." Ethan was already rearranging cushions, his architectural vision apparently endless. Lena helped them reinforce their fortress, and for a while she could almost forget the meetings happening downstairs. The lawyers restructuring an empire, the violence that had brought them all to this point. She could just be mom, playing with her kids, living in the moment. Marco found them there an hour later, still building. He stood in the doorway watching them, and when Lena looked up, the expression on his face stole her breath. He looked like a man who'd found something he'd been searching for his entire life, and couldn't quite believe it was real. "Can I join?" he asked. "You have to be a knight," Emma informed him. "Knights protect the castle." "I can do that." Marco settled on the floor beside them, accepting cushions from Ethan to add to the walls. Knights are good at protecting things. They spent the evening together, the four of them, building castles and telling stories and being a family. Later, over dinner, Marco announced his decision. "I found a house," he said. "Well, technically I found 3 houses, but there's one I really like. I want you to see it tomorrow." "Where is it?" Lena asked. "About 40 minutes from here. Good neighborhood, excellent schools, big yard for the kids to play in." Marco's eyes were bright with excitement. "It's normal, Lena. Not a fortress, not a safe house, just a regular house where regular families live." "Can we see it?" Emma bounced in her seat. "Please?" "Tomorrow," Marco promised. "We'll all go together, and if everyone likes it, we'll make it ours." The house was perfect. Not because it was the biggest or the fanciest, though it was certainly nice, but because it felt like a home. 2 stories of warm brick and white trim, with a wraparound porch and a backyard that seemed to stretch forever. There was a tire swing hanging from an old oak tree, flower beds that needed tending, a kitchen with windows that let in sunshine. The twins ran through it like they'd been unleashed, claiming bedrooms and exploring closets and declaring every new discovery the best thing ever. Lena walked through more slowly, running her hand along the banister, imagining mornings rushing to get the twins ready for school. Evenings cooking dinner in that bright kitchen, nights tucked into bed in the master suite with Marco beside her. "What do you think?" Marco asked, finding her on the back porch watching the twins chase each other around the yard. "I think it's perfect," Lena admitted. "I think it's everything I wanted to give them and couldn't afford. I think it's a dream." "Then let's make it real." Marco's arm slipped around her waist. "I'll have my people draw up the paperwork. We can be moved in by the end of the month." "That fast?" "I'm motivated." Marco pulled her closer. "I want to start our life together, Lena. I want to wake up in that house with you and fall asleep there at night. I want to help the twins with homework at that kitchen table and push them on that swing. I want normal, and I want it with you." Lena turned in his arms, looking up at him. "What about your business? The transition?" "I can run legitimate businesses from anywhere. Most of it's paperwork and phone calls anyway." Marco's hand cupped her face. "I'm done letting work dictate my life. From now on, my family comes first." It was everything Lena had wanted to hear 5 years ago, everything she'd begged him for before she ran, and now he was offering it freely, changed by loss and fatherhood and the realization that some things mattered more than power. "Okay," she said, "let's do it. Let's make this our home." Marco kissed her there on the porch while the twins played in the yard, and Lena felt the last pieces of her resistance crumble. She was all in now, committed to this messy, complicated, beautiful attempt at building a family from the ruins of their past. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Marco's people packed up the estate while Lena and the twins sorted through their meager belongings from Millbrook. Marco insisted on buying new everything: furniture, clothes, toys, kitchen supplies, turning shopping into an adventure that left the twins exhausted and Lena overwhelmed by his generosity. "You don't have to buy out every store," she protested, after the 3rd day of marathon shopping. "I'm making up for lost time," Marco said, loading yet another bag into the SUV. 5 years of birthdays and Christmases, remember? At this rate, we won't have room for it all. Then we'll get a bigger house." But he was teasing. The house was plenty big, and soon it was filled with the chaos of their blended life. The twins' rooms were decorated according to their specifications. Emma's in purples and pinks with art supplies everywhere. Ethan's in blues and greens with building sets that covered every surface. The master bedroom became Lena and Marco's sanctuary, decorated in soft neutrals that felt peaceful after the chaos of parenting. Marco threw himself into domesticity with the same intensity he'd once brought to running his empire. He learned to cook, badly at first, then with increasing competence. He attended every school tour, every parent meeting, asking questions and taking notes like he was preparing for battle. He installed the tire swing properly, painted the fence, learned to operate the lawnmower. Watching him transform was both inspiring and surreal. This was Marco DeLuca, who'd once ordered executions over breakfast, now debating the merits of different elementary school curricula with the earnest intensity of any suburban dad. But the transition wasn't seamless. There were nights when Marco came home tense and angry from difficult negotiations with former partners who felt betrayed. There were phone calls at odd hours, meetings that couldn't be scheduled around family dinner. There were moments when Lena saw the old Marco surface, cold, calculating, dangerous, before he pulled himself back. "It's harder than I thought it would be," Marco admitted one night after the twins were asleep. They were sitting on the back porch, sharing a bottle of wine, watching fireflies dance across the darkened yard. "Walking away, I mean. There are people who don't want me to go legitimate, who see it as abandoning them. Are you in danger?" "Not immediate danger. But I'm making enemies of people who used to be allies." Marco's jaw was tight. "I knew it would happen. Doesn't make it easier." "Do you regret it?" Lena asked quietly. "Regret choosing us over that life?" Marco turned to her, his eyes fierce in the darkness. "Never. Not for a second. That life cost me 5 years with you, with them. I'd burn every bridge, make every enemy, lose every dollar if it meant keeping my family. Even if some of those enemies come calling. Especially then." Marco's hand found hers. "I've built in protections. Security that doesn't look like security, alliances with people who value legitimate business over the old ways. We're as safe as I can make us." It wasn't perfect reassurance, but it was honest, and Lena appreciated the honesty more than false promises. 6 months after moving into the house, Marco threw a birthday party for the twins. Their 6th birthday, though it was the first one he'd ever attended. He went overboard, bounce house in the yard magician, petting zoo, enough cake to feed a small army. The guest list was kids from their new school and their parents, normal people living normal lives, and Marco moved among them with surprising ease. Lena watched him explain his business, real estate development and construction, to other parents, watched him joke with fathers about the challenges of raising kids, watched him fit into this suburban life like he'd been born to it instead of dragged into it kicking and screaming. "Your husband's great with the kids," one mother commented, watching Marco organize a game of freeze dance. "How long have you two been married?" Lena's breath caught. They weren't married, hadn't even discussed it, though they'd been living as a family for months now. But before she could correct the woman, Marco caught her eye across the yard and smiled, and something warm unfurled in her chest. "It feels like forever," Lena said, which was both true and not true at all. The party was winding down when Lena found Marco alone in the kitchen, surveying the wreckage of torn wrapping paper and abandoned paper plates. "I think it was a success," she said, hip-checking him gently. "The twins are happy. That's all that matters." Marco pulled her close, his arms circling her waist. "Did you see Ethan's face when he opened the advanced building set? I thought he was going to explode with excitement. And Emma loved the art studio you set up in the basement. She's got real talent. I want to nurture that." Marco's expression turned serious. "I want to give them everything, Lena. Every opportunity, every advantage. I want them to become whoever they want to be. They will, because they have you showing them it's possible to change, to be better than your past." Marco's eyes searched hers. "Do you really believe that? That I'm better than my past?" "I believe you're trying. That's what matters." Lena reached up to cup his face. "You're not perfect, Marco. You've got a temper, and sometimes you slip back into old habits. But you're here, you're present, you're choosing us every single day. That's being better." "I love you," Marco said, like the words were pulled from somewhere deep. "I know I don't say it enough, but I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone." "I love you too." Lena stood on her toes to kiss him. "Even when you're driving me crazy, even when you're overprotective and controlling, I love you." "I'm working on the controlling part." "Work harder," Lena teased, then speared. "But seriously, Marco, thank you for all of this, for changing your life for us. You're worth changing for." Marco's arms tightened around her. "All 3 of you." That night, after the twins were asleep and the house was quiet, Marco pulled out a small velvet box. "I've been carrying this around for 2 months, he admitted, opening it to reveal a ring. Elegant, but not ostentatious. A single diamond in a platinum setting. Waiting for the perfect moment. Then I realized there's no such thing as a perfect moment. There's just moments, and we decide which ones matter." Lena's heart was pounding. "Marco, let me say this before I lose my nerve." Marco took her hand, his grip warm and steady.
5 years ago, I lost you because I was too stupid to see what mattered. I put my empire above everything, including the woman I loved. I'm not making that mistake again. You and the twins, you're my empire now.
You're what I protect, what I build for, what gives my life meaning. You don't have to. I'm not asking because I have to. I'm asking because I want to. Because I want to be your husband, officially. I want the twins to have parents who are married, who are committed not just to them, but to each other. I want to stand up in front of everyone and promise to love you for the rest of my life. Marco's voice caught. Marry me, Lena. Make this official. Make us a real family. Lena looked at the ring, at Marco's earnest face, at the life they'd built together from ashes and second chances. 6 months ago, she would have said it was too soon, too complicated, too risky. But she'd learned that love wasn't about perfect timing or ideal circumstances. It was about showing up, doing the work, choosing each other even when it was hard. Yes, she said, watching joy break across Marco's face like sunrise. Yes, I'll marry you. Marco slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into a kiss that promised everything: love, commitment, a future built together. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing and crying in equal measure. The twins are going to lose their minds, Lena said. Good. I want everyone to know you're mine. Possessive much? Always. Marco grinned, unrepentant. But only with you. The rest of the world can do what it wants. They told the twins the next morning over breakfast. Emma and Ethan processed the news with the pragmatism of children for whom their parents being together was already fact. So Dad's going to be here forever now? Ethan asked. Forever and always, Marco confirmed. Cool. Can I have more pancakes? Emma was more interested in the logistics. Will we have a wedding? Can I be a flower girl? I want a purple dress. You can absolutely be a flower girl in a purple dress, Lena promised. And I want to walk Mom down the aisle, Ethan announced, because I'm the man of the family too. Marco's eyes went bright with emotion. That's perfect, buddy. Your mom would be lucky to have you walk her down the aisle. They planned a small ceremony for early fall, just family and close friends in the backyard of their house. Marco's legitimate business associates mixed with the few people from Lena's old life who'd stayed in touch, creating an odd but functional blend. Maria cried through the entire ceremony. Vittorio, fully recovered from his injuries, stood as Marco's best man with barely concealed emotion. But the moment that mattered most was when Emma and Ethan stood between their parents, holding both their hands, while the officiant spoke about family and commitment and love that transforms. Marco's voice was steady as he made his vows, promising to love and protect and choose Lena every day for the rest of his life. Lena's voice shook as she promised the same, meaning every word. When the officiant pronounced them married, the twins cheered louder than anyone, and Marco kissed his wife while their children jumped around them with uncontainable joy. The reception was small, but perfect. They danced under string lights in the backyard, ate cake that Emma had helped decorate, toasted to new beginnings and second chances. As the evening wore on and the twins finally crashed from sugar and excitement, Lena found herself standing with Marco at the edge of the yard, watching the last guests filter out. We did it, she said quietly. We actually built this. We did. Marco pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. And we're going to keep building it, one day at a time. What about your business? Is the transition complete? Almost. I've got a few more loose ends to tie up, but by the end of the year, everything will be legitimate, clean. Marco's voice held satisfaction. I'm going to be boring, Lena. A regular businessman with a wife and kids and a mortgage. You could never be boring. Watch me try. True to his word, Marco embraced domesticity with the same intensity he'd once brought to running his empire. He joined the PTA, coached Ethan's youth soccer team, volunteered for Emma's school art program. He learned the names of all the neighbors, attended block parties, became a fixture at the local coffee shop where he'd work on his laptop while other suburban dads discussed lawn care and property taxes. Watching him transform was both inspiring and occasionally hilarious. This man who'd once negotiated million-dollar deals now debated the merits of different soccer cleats with the dedication of a scholar. He'd traded his designer suits for jeans and polo shirts, his downtown penthouse for a house with a mortgage, his empire for a family.
and he seemed genuinely happy. Lena was happy too. She'd gone back to school part-time, working toward the art history degree she'd abandoned years ago. The twins were thriving. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator. Ethan's building projects grew increasingly complex. They had friends, hobbies, a stability Lena had never imagined possible. But there were still moments that reminded them of where they'd come from. Security was still present, though subtle. Cameras disguised as regular home security, guards who looked like groundskeepers, protocols for emergencies that Lena hoped they'd never need. One evening, about a year after the wedding, Marco came home tense from a meeting that had clearly gone poorly. He kissed Lena in greeting, hugged the twins, then disappeared into his study with barely a word. Lena gave him an hour before following. She found him staring at his computer screen, his expression troubled. "What's wrong?" she asked. "One of my old partners is making noise, claiming I owe him for the waterfront development, threatening to go public with information about my past." Lena's stomach dropped. "Can he hurt us?" "Not physically, but he could damage the legitimate business, make things difficult." Marco's jaw was tight. "I thought I'd covered all the bases, paid off everyone who needed paying. Apparently I missed one." "What are you going to do?" Marco was silent for a long moment, and Lena could see him wrestling with old instincts. The Marco of 5 years ago would have handled this with violence, would have made the problem disappear permanently. But that Marco was gone, replaced by someone who'd promised to solve problems differently. "I'm going to negotiate," Marco said finally. "Offer him a piece of something else, find out what he really wants. And if that doesn't work, I'll let the lawyers handle it." "Not violence." "Not violence." Marco pulled her onto his lap, his arms wrapping around her waist. "I'm trying to be better, remember? That means handling problems like a legitimate businessman, not a crime boss." "I'm proud of you." "Don't be proud yet. Ask me again after the meeting tomorrow, see if I managed to keep my temper." Marco's smile was wry. "Changing is hard, Lena. Some days I want to fall back into old patterns because they're easier, because I know how to solve problems with intimidation and force." "But you don't." "But I don't," Marco agreed. "Because I've got too much to lose now. I'm not risking this life for the satisfaction of proving I'm still dangerous." The meeting the next day went better than expected. Marco's old partner accepted a generous buyout and a consulting position that gave him prestige without real power. It cost Marco money and pride, but he came home with the problem solved and his hands clean. "See," Lena said that night, "you can do this. You can be who you need to be for us. With you reminding me why it matters, yeah, I can." Marco pulled her close. "I love this life, Lena. I love coming home to you and the twins, love being just Dad instead of Don DeLuca. I never thought I could be this happy." As the years passed, that happiness only deepened. The twins grew, 7, then 8, then 9 years old, developing their own personalities and interests. Emma's artistic talent blossomed, her room becoming a gallery of paintings and sketches. Ethan's fascination with building evolved into a genuine gift for engineering, his creations growing increasingly sophisticated. Marco was there for all of it, every school play, every soccer game, every art show and science fair. He helped with homework, attended parent-teacher conferences, learned to braid Emma's hair, and explain fractions to Ethan. He became exactly what he'd promised, a present, engaged father who put his children first. And his relationship with Lena deepened too. They learned each other again, this time without the shadow of his criminal life hanging over them. They had real conversations about real things, finances and parenting, and plans for the future. They argued sometimes, usually about Marco's tendency toward overprotection or Lena's insistence on independence, but they always talked it through. They built traditions, Sunday dinners where everyone cooked together, Friday movie nights, summer vacations to places the twins chose, holiday celebrations that were loud and chaotic and perfect. On the twins' 10th birthday, Marco gathered them all in the backyard where it had all begun. The tire swing still hung from the oak tree, though the twins had long outgrown it. The flower beds Lena had planted were thriving. The house showed the wear of a family living fully. Scuff marks on the walls, grass stains on the carpet, evidence of life being lived. "I want to tell you all something," Marco said, his arm around Lena's waist, the twins sitting on the porch steps listening. 10 years ago today, I didn't know you existed. I didn't know I was a father, didn't know I had these 2 incredible kids in the world, and I was lost, Lena. I was so lost. Marco, Lena started, but he shook his head. Let me finish. I need to say this. Marco's eyes found the twins. Your mom gave me the greatest gift when she came back into my life and brought you with her. She gave me purpose, gave me a reason to be better than I was. And you two, you made me want to change everything, to build a life worth living. We know, Dad, Emma said gently. You tell us all the time. I do, don't I? Marco laughed. But I want to make sure you really understand the life I have now, this house, this family, being your dad. It's everything I never knew I wanted, and I will never, ever take it for granted. We won't either, Ethan said seriously. We know we're lucky. We're all lucky, Lena added, tears in her eyes. We found each other again when we shouldn't have. We built something beautiful from something broken. That's not luck. That's choice. We chose each other every day, and we keep choosing each other. Marco pulled them all into a group hug, the four of them standing in their backyard as the sun set, and Lena felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was what she'd been searching for all those years ago when she ran. Not safety from Marco, but safety with him. Not hiding from his world, but building a new world together. That night, after the twins were asleep and the house was quiet, Lena and Marco sat on their bed talking about the future. I got an offer today, Marco said. A foundation wants me to speak to at-risk youth about making better choices, about how it's never too late to change your life. Are you going to do it? I don't know. Part of me thinks I'm not qualified. I've done terrible things, Lena. Things I can never take back or make right. But you changed. That's what makes you qualified. Lena took his hand. You can show them that your past doesn't have to define your future, that you can choose differently. Marco considered this. What do I tell them when they ask what I did? Do I lie? Do I tell the truth and risk everything we've built? You tell them the truth, that you were involved in organized crime, that you hurt people, that you made choices you regret. And then you tell them how you got out, how you built something better. Lena's voice was firm. Your past is part of your story, Marco. You don't have to hide it. You just have to show that it's not the whole story. What if it damages the business? What if clients don't want to work with me once they know? Then they're not the right clients. The right ones will see what I see. Someone who fought like hell to become better for the people he loves. Marco pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. How did I get so lucky to have you? You didn't get lucky. You chose to change, and I chose to believe in you. We both took a risk. Best risk I ever took. Marco did accept the speaking engagement, and then another and another. His story resonated. The crime boss who'd walked away for his family, who'd chosen love over power, who'd proven that transformation was possible. He didn't glorify his past or minimize his crimes, but he also didn't let them define his present. And slowly, carefully, he built a new legacy. Not as Don DeLuca, feared and powerful, but as Marco DeLuca, father and husband and businessman who'd clawed his way from darkness into light. Years later, when Emma was preparing for college and Ethan was building robots in the garage, when Lena had her degree and was working at a museum she loved, when Marco's businesses were thriving and completely legitimate, they gathered again in that same backyard. Do you ever regret it? Lena asked Marco one evening, watching the twins, not twins anymore but young adults, argue good-naturedly about something inconsequential. Walking away from all that power? Marco didn't hesitate. Never. Not once. That power was empty, Lena. It couldn't love me back, couldn't make me laugh, couldn't give my life meaning. He gestured to their children, their home, their life. This is real power, the power to choose who you become, who you love, what you build. That's the only power that matters. Even knowing what it cost you, the bridges you burned, the enemies you made. Especially knowing that, because it taught me what's worth fighting for. And it's not territory or respect or fear. It's this. It's love. Emma called out to them, asking Marco's opinion on something. He went to her, falling easily into conversation with his daughter, and Lena watched him with a full heart. This was the man she'd fallen in love with all those years ago, finally freed from the weight of his darker nature. This was the father her children deserved. This was the future she'd dreamed of, but never quite believed possible. The twins had asked about their first 5 years sometimes, about why their mother had run,
why their father hadn't been there. Lena and Marco had been honest with them, age appropriately, explaining about fear and danger and difficult choices. They'd apologized for the time lost, for the ways their decisions had shaped the twins' early lives. But Emma and Ethan were remarkably well-adjusted, secure in their parents' love, confident in their place in the world. They knew their father's past, knew he'd done terrible things, but they also knew the man he'd become. And that man was their dad, who taught them right from wrong, who showed up for every important moment, who loved them with a fierceness that bordered on religious. On their 16th birthday, Marco gave each twin a letter, personal, private words about his journey and his hopes for them. Lena watched them read, saw tears track down Emma's face, and Ethan's jaw tighten with emotion. "Dad," Emma said when she finished, "thank you for choosing to be better, for showing us that people can change." "Thank you for giving me a reason to change," Marco replied, his voice thick. Ethan just hugged him, this boy who'd grown tall and strong, and Marco held his son like he was still 5 years old and newly discovered. That night, in the privacy of their room, Marco broke down. "I miss so much with them," he said, grief raw in his voice. 5 years, Lena. 5 years of firsts I'll never get back." "I know, and I'm sorry for that. But look at what you didn't miss, the last 11 years. You were there for their first days of school, their first friendships, their triumphs and their failures. You've been their father in every way that matters. It doesn't feel like enough. It never will. But it's everything you could give them, and it's everything they needed." Lena cupped his face, making him look at her. "You are a good father, Marco De Luca. You're a good man, and I'm so proud to be your wife, to have built this life with you." Marco kissed her, deep and grateful, and full of love that had survived separation and secrets and the transformation of who they both were. As the twins prepared to leave for college, Emma to art school, Ethan to engineering, the house felt too quiet. Lena and Marco wandered through rooms that had once been filled with childhood chaos, remembering bedtime stories and homework battles and teenage arguments. "We did good," Marco said one evening, standing in the doorway of Ethan's room, now stripped of posters and personality. "We did great," Lena corrected. "They're good kids, Marco. Kind and smart and confident. We raised them right." "We did it together." "Together," Lena agreed, taking his hand. "The only way that works." On the day they drove the twins to their respective schools, Emma to the West Coast, Ethan to the East, Marco cried unabashedly. He hugged his children and told them he loved them and made them promise to call every week. He reminded them they could always come home, that their rooms would be waiting, that nothing would change how much he loved them. "Dad, we know," Emma said gently, patting his back. "You've told us approximately 1,000,000 times. But I'll tell you 1,000,000 more," Marco said fiercely. "I love you both so much it terrifies me." "We love you too, Dad," Ethan said, "and we'll make you proud." "You already do, every single day." Driving home from the last drop-off, the car felt cavernously empty. Lena and Marco were quiet, processing this new phase of life. When they finally pulled into their driveway, Marco turned to her. "What do we do now?" he asked. "Without the twins to raise, without the daily chaos, what do we do?" Lena smiled. "We live, we travel, we explore, we figure out who we are as just us instead of as parents. We start the next chapter." "I like the sound of that." Marco leaned over and kissed her softly. "You know what? We should renew our vows. Have a real ceremony this time, not the rushed thing we did before. We had a beautiful ceremony. We did. But I want to do it again now, after everything we've been through. I want to stand up and promise to love you all over again." So they did. On their 20th anniversary, they renewed their vows in the same backyard where they'd first married. The twins came home for it, bringing significant others and stories from their independent lives. The house filled with people who'd been part of their journey, Maria and Vittorio, friends from the neighborhood, business associates who'd become genuine friends. Marco stood before Lena in the golden light of early autumn and said, 20 years ago, you gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. You let me back into your life and into our children's lives. You believed I could be better, and then you helped me become better. Everything good in my life traces back to you." "You did the work," Lena countered. "You made the hard choices, changed everything for us. I just believed in you."
That was enough. That belief saved my life. Marco took her hands. I promise to love you for the next 20 years and the 20 after that, and however many more we get. I promise to keep choosing you, keep building with you, keep growing with you. And I promise the same, Lena said, her voice steady and sure. To love you, to choose you, to build this life with you until our last breath. They kissed while their children cheered and their friends applauded, and Lena felt the rightness of it settle deep in her soul. This was what love looked like after 20 years. Not the passionate intensity of new romance, but the deep abiding certainty that came from choosing each other through everything life threw at them. That night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet, Lena and Marco sat on the back porch watching the stars. No regrets? Lena asked. Not a single one. Marco pulled her close. I got everything I wanted, Lena. A family, a life, a purpose. I got you, and I got them, and I got to become someone I'm actually proud of. That's more than most people get in a lifetime. We got lucky. We got a second chance, Marco corrected, and we didn't waste it. That's not luck. That's us refusing to give up on each other. Lena leaned her head on his shoulder, comfortable and content. I love you, Marco De Luca. I love you too. Always have, always will. And there, in the backyard of the house, they'd made a home. Surrounded by the evidence of the life they'd built together, Lena and Marco sat in peaceful silence. The past was behind them. The mistakes, the violence, the years lost. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of possibility. But in that moment, they had everything that mattered. They had each other, they had their family, they had love that had survived darkness and emerged stronger for it. They had chosen each other every day, through everything. And that choice had made all the difference. The twins they never knew had become the family they'd always needed. The love they'd lost had been found again, transformed and deepened by time and sacrifice. The man who'd been a monster had become a father. The woman who'd run had found the courage to stay. And together, they'd built something beautiful from the ashes of what came before. A story of redemption, transformation, and love that refused to die. It was enough. It was everything. It was home.